There we go. Jesus, it's slow. All right. Good morning, everybody. Just texting Jake. He's on his way. Though this part will be cut out when we get to him actually doing our official intro. So, oh boy, it's going to be a good day. I am almost done these pages from Alex Turbin for the Duke. So I'm expecting, not today. I know I'll get really good and far on them today, but it's going to be definitely next week. So I have no doubts about that. Other than, some kind of catastrophe, like a snowstorm. No, not even a snowstorm. Will stop me next week. Yeah, a lot of noodling. This is page 6, but I'm far along on a lot of these pages, but I'm going over them. Like right now, let's see, page 1, 2 is going to need a little bit more. 3, same thing. 4 is really good. This is really the flagship. Other than I'm going to throw some white acrylic down. Doing a balancing act here. Just sent a message out to Instagram. Yep, it's posted. So we all goods. We are goods. All goods. Let's see how many people are snowed in. But this is sort of the marker how I have this page. Nicely balanced. It's dark yet, you got some stark light points on there and everything. But every page is its unique composition. Just putting things in there, trying to figure stuff out. Kind of like these faux clouds started doing in this page here. Oh, there's Jake. Let me get him in here. Good morning, sir.
Well, hello.
We are live, and you did give us a pretty picture. So, which is how far along are you on that?
Pro White Melody is all I have to do is scan the pages.
Woohoo! All right.
And I'm gonna be putting this out. Number 1, this is a post-apocalyptic story with this character as the lead, and she's trapped on a world of demons.
Nice.
She wakes up in the ice.
Good for her.
Yeah. So this the art style is going to be outsider art, or because I do it with my students, and very unpredictable results, and looks.
I can't wait. I really can't wait, dude. That was one of the contenders, or at least a talking point when you first called me and we were talking about whether we were going to get back into doing comics together, or if we're going to do it, since we are going to do it, what are we going to work on? So, but yeah, do you want to get us? You want to get us officially started? Do our intro?
Yeah. So hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Making Turbo Pit Fighter, the post-apocalyptic sci-fi story, where we have a whole back world being invented, and that's what all these ranting notes are all about. There's so much being written here, and some of it's actually readable already on the Hell Claw website. Kurt, you should know I'm just starting. Well, a couple things this week on the hellclaw.com website, which sometimes we take some of that stuff and import it into our Substack. I have a new tab. It's called Kill Crazy Priests in Space, but it's really going to be about the outer space dimension of this. Because we haven't spoken about this much, but in real life, we have plans for terraforming Mars and terraforming other places, the moon, and those things are in progress in real life. We just sent out these expeditionary spacecraft into the moons of Jupiter, and they're going to be arriving in 2030. That's going to be exciting. So
that's camera work. They'll be showing us. They'll be showing us the stuff camera wise.
Yeah, they're gonna do like 29 passes of the moon Europa,
Wow.
and they're going to get a lot of information about the atmosphere and everything. So here's what I have developed, because I'm talking with AI, and AI is really good about learning science, and what is underway is a great foundation to starting out thinking about what is going to happen in the next 50, 100, 150 years in real life. And, the AI has some ideas based on projects that are already underway, but there's a lot that they can't tell you, obviously. So that's where sci-fi comes in. And then when I give it the suggestion, about what's going to be in my story, that's the one thing that I find AI useful for. The one thing. It's so annoying. It's so annoying. But to be able at a moment's notice to answer any questions about real science and follow-up questions. And I have learned so much. It's like a college course for me, because I've been learning so much about not just quantum physics, but the periodic table of elements, what we know, what we don't know. And, I always try to relate it to the future and what's going to be happening in real life, so I can bring it into our story. And, the one thing that we're going to have in our story that's not very realistic is human enhancement. But I don't know, Kurt, once they unlock, right now we have quantum computers. There's also this thing called photonic quantum computers, which are they're insanely different, because what you can do now, on the quantum level. Let me just explain one thing as I set up my computer, right?
Yeah.
So they have you might have heard the expression quantum entanglement, and this was something that Einstein called spooky action at a distance, way back when he was still alive, when they were explaining to him how quantum entanglement works. Quantum entanglement means that two quantum particles are entangled, and if one changes, the other one changes in real time, instantly, regardless where it is, regardless how far away it is. And that is kind of amazing to think about, that's actual science and that can actually happen. But when you inquire how far along are scientists in actually doing this, this is how quantum computers are going to be able to be so much faster and so much more powerful. But the fact of because I'm like, how does this work? How do you do that? And so the answer was that you start out with a nonlinear crystal, and this is just something that occurs in nature. You know what a crystal is, right? And if you shoot a laser at it at the precise angle, you separate each photon, which is the smallest particle, the smallest quantum particle. It's a particle of light. It's a wave. And well, it acts as a wave until it hits the surface, but it separates one photon into two lower level photons that are entangled. And scientists are already able to manipulate these entangled photons by sending each one down, for example, a fiber optic cable, or they can send it, to another, light receptor, using light amplification or mirroring. But a physical cable is better. And once these things are entangled, you can change the state of them, which means things like the spin direction, the polarity, whatever the quantum functions are. And the other one will change no matter where it is in real time. And that is just like so unbelievable to try to wrap your head around.
Yeah.
And so when you ask, well, what is science going to be using this for in the future? It's just everything, like energy, um, information storage, information communication, like, it's and it's just starting now in 2026. I mean, this has been going on for a while, but we're just now, it was literally this year where we're starting to hear, actual buzz about quantum computers and the race to Q day. So, that's just a little example of the stuff that I've been learning about in real life, so that I could try to figure out, like, how to write the story. And, at that point, the story kind of writes itself. You have your characters and you have your world, set up, and the conflict, the setting, um, the themes, and then, you just get the science into it. So, I'm really excited. And and it also makes me look at Elon Musk in a new way, because Elon Musk said a long time ago that his plan is to colonize Mars, and he's actually trying to do it. He's trying to build the stuff. And I was researching what would be necessary, and it's also kind of like common sense when you think about it. What will have to happen is, first they're going to probably try to build habitable life environments, terraforming. Like, that means domes and underground facilities on the moon, just to kind of, like, develop it closer to home and get it going, and then also use that as a staging area and a launch pad for Mars. And then Europa, which is one of the moons of Jupiter, which are, conceivably habitable by humans if the right conditions are created. And what that would involve will be sending robots there. And some of this I'm imagining myself, and some of this is clearly in the works already. But um, they're going to send robots up that can not only mine the native materials there and machine them and mill them, and and convert them into actual engines and actual power supplies and motors and parts and everything. But the robots are going to replicate themselves. And once they replicate themselves, they're going to be terraforming, which means building and planting and trying to make it, hospitable for humans. And that's going to probably, in my imagine, that's probably going to take decades. And then the humans will arrive. So the AI is trying to tell me this is going to be happening in the 2040s. But in our story, I'm like, I don't know. I have it.
Give them a
I
little
have
bit
it.
more time.
Yeah. So I have it really kicking off in the 2070s. We're gonna say the moon is terraformed by the 2040s, but Mars will be the arrival of humans will be 2070, so 2070s. And because you just have to give it a number if you're writing fiction. Just like, all right, this happens, it's now. And yeah, I mean, these things, people have been thinking about this. I'm just kind of thinking about it for the first time. But um what will be necessary is sustainable, atmosphere for breathing, and the creation of oxygen. There's the robots don't need that, but you're going to need food. You're going to need some basic medical apparatus that can deliver babies and cure sick people and stuff, and do surgeries. And then you're going to need like all the science stuff, because the people that are going to be up there are going to be survive, making sure that they survive, but also going to be studying like crazy. And sending information back and forth to Earth is going to be a big part of it. But also, where else are we going to be reaching out to, as the human race expands into space? I think the nearest exoplanet is way far away, but these are the kind of things that we're going to have to do eventually. I mean, our sun is going to go supernova in like, billions of years from now. But, the question of will the human race still be around? It's going to be a matter of, kind of like the question of how human life started on Earth. How did that switch get turned on? And, there are mainstream theories that, something got plopped down on this planet from, space, whether it was like,
Meteorites.
something from an asteroid, right?
Yeah,
It wasn't
yeah.
it wasn't necessarily green men,
No,
but
no,
it was life,
no.
and it was like contagious life, or the building blocks of life,
Well, they
and
just to jump in, like I don't. I guess because we share the same Turbo Pit Fighter primary YouTube channel as like maybe viewing off of. But did you see they got a hold of a piece of meteorite from somewhere? I should have written it down. I'm gonna start writing this stuff down. But
well, I just
when they
bookmark
cut it
on.
apart, when they cut it
Yeah.
apart, they actually saw organism like fossilized not organisms, but what would you call it?
Bacteria.
Bacterial and everything. So they had to go into those super
Bacteria is
microscope.
life.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what they are saying. That there was some form of life inside this. So when you take that and you smash it against a planet like Earth being formed, we were just nothing but molten magma, right? And it's just a furnace to cook up these chunks of rock that have bacteria in it. And then when it starts cooling down, maybe a few of them are they're alive.
Yeah, one of the exciting experiments that is going to be taking place is bringing life forms to these inhospitable planets.
Yeah.
Like tardigrades and mosses and
Yep.
bacteria and stuff like that. And so yeah, we could be doing the Prometheus thing, by just dropping stuff over there. That they could all die in the first 5 minutes too. So
Yeah.
and I kept asking, like, when they're going to encircle Europa, are they going to be dropping anything down onto the surface? The surface is a little weird because it's kind of like this underground oceans and this like frozen crust. So you wonder, I guess it would be a waste of time, because you would have to drill down pretty far to get down. But they might be able to make like a little drilling unit that just bores its way down, and then drops into the ocean. Might be really cold. But every time there's a challenge like that, like they talk about the dust storms on Mars being really dangerous to robots that will land there. And I'm like, well, what's in this dust? And they're like, oh man, silicone, titanium, aluminum. I'm like, and it's flying around, so that means it's coming right to you. All you need to do is create like a windsock and you're collecting the raw materials,
Right.
and but then it's like, oh, but the the dust is electrically charged
Even better.
because it's right, and that means you could capture energy too.
Yep.
So once you build all that stuff, it's got to be very durable. But once you build all that stuff, you're just getting free wind power and free minerals and raw earth elements and I guess Martian
Well, this is
elements.
where AI comes in and starts helping scientists figure out how to design machines, robot AI centric or machines, in order to task exactly the fantasy that you laid out.
Yeah, and speaking of breakthroughs that we're learning about in the past week, I didn't bookmark it. Every time I see one of these things, I should bookmark it on my Instagram, on the DOOMMAGS Instagram. But I'm remembering it. Scientists using AI have come up with a form of aluminum that is much stronger and much more durable, and it's because they have figured out how to make the bonds thicker. You like they have in these forever chemicals, and then these forever atoms, and instead of trying it like 50,000 different ways, they just let AI model it, and they came up with it within a couple of hours, and then they created it in real life. And now they're talking about this is going to revolutionize everything because aluminum is so much cheaper. And once they put it through this process, it'll be strong as iron or steel or titanium. And so, we're talking about multiple, like game-changing breakthroughs, just in the last couple of months since scientists started, or maybe it's been years, but since scientists have gotten a hold of AI, and that's what I have in my stories too with Elevena, is that the AI is going to do all the trials, whether it's just theoretic, or physically, they're going to be able to do them either way. And so, that just brings up so many questions for me about how we can create new forms of energy or unlock the nuclear energy, which really just means like how do you change the nucleus of an atom, which could happen in lots of other elements. We just talk about radioactive elements because it's because they have an it creates a chain reaction, but there's so much that can happen with every element. And the other thing is that there's elements that we might yet discover, and some of which are created only for fractions of a second in super colliders. And we haven't even begun to like combine all of these processes to see all the different combinations. Like I said, what happened if you have particles colliding in like the hadron collider or something, but right at the point of impact, you focused X-ray beams that were crisscrossing to create like an area of concentration, and how would that affect it? And it's like, who the hell knows? It's a whole new avenue of inquiry, right? So, when you're applying like radioactivity, magnetism, gravity, bombardment, there's just so much that we haven't really gotten to yet that we will. And AI and quantum computers will speed that up, as will robots. That we just like do a prompt, you type a prompt, and then the robot will start, designing experiments, building labs, all of this kind of stuff is in the future. And it's kind of mind-boggling, you know.
Well, it's being imagined as we live and breathe right now. And I think that freaks people out because it unsettles the fabric of our known reality right now. Like going back to those quantum computing and theories and applications. Like, I forget what the symposium is. It's not the. It's a. It starts with an I. I catch it sometimes, but they're really tough to stay focused on. But there's more and more quantum theorists, physicists, and mathematicians coming on saying everything we know up to this point is bullshit. They're just doing it flat out. It's bullshit. You're not you're not fooling me, in other words. And what it's really based on is there's a younger generation of scientists and mathematicians that are coming up through the ranks that are debunking all of the old nuclear atomic science papers that have been basically barring the way. In other words, no. Einstein was right about all of these things. Oppenheimer and what he and his crew, they were right about these. Yeah, but we're moving out beyond that. So we can't use this as a basis, a scientific base anymore. There's some application to it, but there was one woman who was a mathematician, and she really just went like off the rails. Was like, at first it sounded like she was like really angry, but then it just turned into this like pure sense of excitement because, it's all new now. And now we're having that formalizing. And then when you were also mentioning like having robots and, hooked up to AI learning models and stuff, and then setting them off in a laboratory, when I was a young guy and I would ask my dad what he did for a living, he would, I remember one time he explained it. My mom was there and she's like, Eddie, he doesn't understand any of that. Oh, okay. Well, I'll have to take you to work one day. And later he did, but basically what he was like joking about was he would come up with problems and then set experiments up, reactions, to have reactions all throughout his lab, to then just leave, go have lunch or whatever, play golf, and then come back and see what the reactions are. And
Right.
And failure is the key to success. That's the thing, is like, I believe one of the biggest things we need to annihilate in an educated mind and an educational system is the reversal of this industrialized, like, you can never make mistakes because when you get hired by a company, they can't afford you making mistakes. Now, I think that's going to be the key for people getting jobs, is not only, like, I'm not saying causing mistakes or errors, but being able to identify something ahead of time and then be able to receive it and then help process it in, like, quote unquote human terms. Because we all know these computers, if not already, very, very soon are going to have their own internal dialogue and communication forms, especially when we're trying to get one to talk to the other, like we did with the two Google machines, years back. So I'm right with you on all of this. Of course, for me, it's purely fantasy, fantasy and because I'm such a big sword and sorcery guy, I'm really interested in the sort of application of magic. You know what I mean? Like, magic in like, let's say, like, applicable theory, like alchemy, for instance, turning, lead into gold. All you're doing is you're just molecularly changing the structure of something to be something else, or forming something to become into the world. All things are created. Nothing can be absolutely destroyed in the universe. It's just matter being distributed and stuff like that. So when I hear all this stuff, I'm filtering it through a whole sword and sorcery type of, like, oh, what kind of magic would that be? And that's why I also like bringing in the technology or the alien robots or, these types of things into Crom's world. So
yeah, I also saw a post on being able to create gold now too, which is yeah. I mean, it's not worth doing, but they can do it, and it's crazy. So yeah, you brought some up, like, about I guess kind of like the access level, like, in the past, forever, ever since the beginning of science, there was kind of like a barrier to entry,
Yeah.
to be on the level of Einstein or Niels Bohr or any of these people.
Yep.
You had to go to school, you had to, you had to publish papers, you had to be in an
Yep.
inner circle and everything. But I mean, look at me, like, I'm just a teacher in school, and I mess around with writing sci-fi. And I now, have an understanding, that I said it's like a college course, that it probably would have taken years of study and thousands of dollars to know what I understand now. And so can anybody else, I
Yep.
mean, it's always been the case where you could just like read read up on something and learn that way. But there's something different about being able to ask questions and follow up questions, and do that again and again and again, and with repetition on your own pace, while you're driving or doing the dishes or whatever, so that you actually understand what's being talked about in a way that you can start thinking about it. And then when you start thinking about it, you can make suggestions to the machine then, and find out, like, are these things being explored? And by and large, we're going to have examples of things that just regular everyday people suggest. And and whether or not it actually makes it to a lab where they're doing experiments or anything is another question. But you would think that if it's being fed into the AI, that that'll be part of their database and everything. And so that's one big question I have, is whether AI is continuing to learn from end users. I have a
I think
feeling
so.
that
I
I
believe.
well I think they do when they want to, like, and not in a good way, like, to the extent that they can data mine you and learn about something, that can help them make money off you. They probably are tracking that, and they probably are not
Yeah.
only collecting that information in a database, but also synthesizing that information. In other words, using the AI to figure out new and interesting ways to get you hooked, or increase engagement, or get you to pay something. And
Yeah, but how
we're
many Matt Damon Goodwill Hunting people are out there? There's probably I've actually heard scientists say this in jest on some of these online symposiums I've knocked into, and they say it in nervous jest because they believe for every per square capita of like 100,000 people, there could definitely be 100 people that are smarter than them.
sure.
And it's exactly what you started off by saying. It's because they have not chosen or did not want to go through an educational cattle haul, cattle
Well, yeah. Well,
corral. And
what if you're born into the poorest diaspora in India, and you never had
exactly,
2
exactly.
cents
So
to
you could say they could configure at least 10,000 people there are probably smarter than your quote unquote average MIT graduate.
right.
They're just not being educated through the industrialized system. You know what I mean? In order to be employed or employable. But just
Right.
like you, all they have, they have cell phones. They all have cell phones. They get a free chat GPT. You know what I mean? And then when they're starting to make things happen, and maybe even like getting together in small groups, and like like really expanding upon a lot of the free access software out there, I do believe the machine will bounce a signal back to and say, hey, just so you guys are aware, like what you guys are talking about, there's a whole cluster of people in India right now that are not only figuring it out, but have also come up with a couple of probabilities that have failed them, but that has led them in this direction.
Right. And then you're also, I mean, the powers that be have thought about this, like, how do like the Googles of the world have thought about, like, how do we get that kid in Bangladesh or something, who's just like wasting away in some poor town or city. How do we get them into a school, and then to over to our company where we can have them programming stuff. And that is why we have, since 2000, a law in the U.S. anyway to force standardized testing into every single public school. And it wasn't the case before. Before that, it was kind of the choice of the state or the school district. But now it's a law, and who has it benefited? It has benefited these companies who can now find, just by doing a search from a desk, who are the best test
Smartest and
takers,
brightest.
smartest and bright, right? And that's why standardized tests were developed in the first place. During World War II, there was this interesting story. When they were recruiting fighter pilots, and they realized, well, we have to invest the equivalent of millions of dollars today into training them, and they're going to be operating equipment which costs the equivalent of millions of dollars today. We don't want to just hand this over to anybody. How do we not only get like the best and the brightest and the most capable, but it's also the people that can make the right decisions
on the fly.
Right. So they designed this test, and they had like the top like 100 recruits from the whole country, like in Washington D.C. or like some base or whatever, and they gave a test that was extremely hard, but they only gave them like half of the time that it takes. And then they wanted to see like who thrives in an environment like that. And then they said, okay, these are going to be our fighter pilots and everything. And and the funny thing was, it wasn't always guys. It was a couple of women in there too. That they said, oh boy, what are we going to do now?
No, women can fly planes, Jake.
Well, they can do the standardized tests, better than the average. So then they realize, and they put those women into the science divisions. You might see the movies that they have about them. There's one called Hidden Figures, and it's really like a celebration of the first Black scientists in NASA, and during the time of Turing, when he was inventing the computer, and how he relied on all these, this team of women and everything.
Yeah.
But it's celebrated more as kind of like of an African American celebration than it is as a female celebration. So it's actually both. And I every year they go over it with the students in my middle school, so I'm very familiar with it. But it's only been the last like 10-15 years where they got any credit at all for what they did, and especially during the war effort. So there's AI is now going to be able to do this, or apps are going to be able to do this much more easily. You're not going to have to do standardized testing anymore. You're going to be able to just build data profiles on people, and whether it's connected to their school or not. You might find resumes. You might find resume searches, and people that can do advanced calculations or problem solving. And I mean, I feel like I'm just doing this for fun and hobby, but there are people that are probably doing this for work, and they're trying to innovate some actual thing that they want to get off the ground, whether they're an entrepreneur or researcher or whatever. And I just on the weekend for fun, so I like to write my sci-fi thing, and I'm coming, every once in a while I come across a thing like, well, why, are scientists doing it where where you take this and then you combine it with that, and then you look at it this way, and like, what are we doing right now to study tardigrades and the fact that they're radiation resistant, that there are radiation resistant life forms? Are we going to be somehow porting that to human physiology, or higher order plants and animals?
Replicants, man, replicants.
What are the examples of that? Right. And then you talk about the bikini atoll, and all of this stuff comes up. And
Chernobyl,
yeah. I mean,
the Chernobyl wolves. That's a really good documentary.
I think it's it's not so much the wolves, it's
Well, that's what they just called the
the
documentary.
the warthogs. What do they call it? Those what do you call those pigs? The wild pigs, boars, right? The
Yeah,
Chernobyl boars. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't be eating one of those anytime soon. But they glow in the
But
dark.
they're smart. They're smart.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's all kinds of that. Like what I was doing yesterday. Sometimes it's frustrating because you just hit dead ends. But what I was asking yesterday, and it's something I still don't understand, is about radioactive materials like uranium and plutonium, right? For decades, we have been harnessing the power of plutonium and uranium by creating, fission, and the whole thing is that we have to have coolant nearby. Otherwise, it just grows and grows and grows. And you have Hiroshima when you just wanted, enough energy to spin some turbines, right? So I keep saying, what happens if we take some radioactive material like plutonium or uranium, and then and you keep it in a secured container, but then you have an aperture on the container that just opens up for a fraction of a second to control the amount of radiation that is released. And so that you could, harness that, like, or use that to power something. Is this going on? Is this a field of study? Blah, blah, blah. And I've been getting just a dead end. Like, no, you can't do that, and it's not being done. And I'm like, well, why? Like, what? What is it that makes that not a doable thing? And I'm trying to understand. Um, the other thing that I've learned that I just missed it. I don't know. I didn't take chem. Did you take chem when you were in high school?
No.
No, yeah, I don't know. I missed chem. I had my like science credits, and I think once I took bio, I didn't have to take anymore, and I just like kind of opted out. I don't even remember. I think I took a bio regions in New York State. We have the exit exams, but I never took chem. I never took physics, and I understand that regions level physics is really a lot of math. It's the combination of math and science together. Um, but I didn't take a lot of chem, and so I just didn't know this. But every element on the periodic table of elements, every single one, has something called isotopes, right? Which is a different version of it, right? So when they talk about like carbon 15, or when they talk about like iodine 9, whenever there's like a number after the element name, it means it's not exactly the straight version of it that you see on the periodic table. There are isotopes which have different numbers of electrons or neutrons. I forget which one, but and some of them are more or less unstable because of that. And so it's possible, at least in my mind anyway, to discover isotopes of all kinds of elements that are not yet discovered, and to see if any of them can become more unstable, so that like I think the whole key is to why they call it nuclear energy and nuclear physics is because you're changing the nucleus, right? And if you can change what's in the nucleus of an atom, the energy needed to that is like megatons, and that's why it's such a big deal, that like nuclear power and nuclear energy, and why it can be so dangerous, because it just grows exponentially out of control unless you can stop it. And so that's why you can look at something like Europa, the moon of Europa, the Jupiter's moon, as a positive. When they say it's a negative, that it's so cold there, right? And there's plenty of planets like that are so cold, that you'll never get humans there, and it'll never be worthwhile for anything, and even the robots might not survive because it's so cold. well, why don't we just see that as an opportunity to get free cooling, right, for nuclear energy, and then the process of nuclear energy becomes that much easier because you don't need any water, and you don't need to bring all this water, and you don't need to have this coolant and all of this like stuff, because it's all there naturally. So the same thing with the windstorms on Mars. You can turn lemons into lemonade if you just design something for that atmosphere, for that terrain. And yeah, so this really has me thinking differently about what SpaceX is doing, and it really just brings you right back to the storyline of Alien, and these corporations that see outer space as just a race to valuable minerals and valuable mining opportunities. And I'm sure that's what Elon is seeing in his in his dreams. But he also might be like towing the line and saying, well, we need to preserve humanity. What happens if there's a nuclear war on Earth, and we need life forms to to be distributed throughout space, blah blah blah. All that's kind of stuff sounds good, but he's also like the biggest me guy in history, or maybe Trump is, but all these fucking guys,
Yeah,
all
but
these guys.
what's wrong with that? I don't
What's
understand
that?
why. I don't understand why that's a negative, because I don't. The one thing that you can't do is you can't be at the same place or be two things at the same time. You know what I mean? And
Yes,
like
yes, that's called superposition. Yes, you can.
right, exactly. So you know what I mean? Like I've seen many, especially when he was younger, not want to say documentaries, just like exposés, where how cruel it looked to be working for him, because he creates, so he finds individuals that will work on problems for him, right? And then he has these big like councils, if you want, in all these different areas, which is why he can own all these large companies, is because he does, let's say big decision making, not the decision making. But when it gets down to it, performance, high level performance, and I know this from many situations I've been in. Being nice is not relative to being correct, and it's not all the time. It's not all the time, but there's a difficulty once you break out of let's just say the average normal world of existence, where you start going into a place of excitable resolve and creativity that has nothing to do with this place and your feelings. Like, it just, and this is me speaking. It just doesn't. And I believe a lot of these individuals, when they were either maturing, well, it would definitely be when they're maturing, but it's some integral space for them. They started finding that freeing themselves of trying to keep everybody toed in line is not the best way of getting problems solved. And so when somebody is not performing to the task that they've been placed in front of, hence / compensated, if you don't meet this expectation and your belly aches and you just didn't want to go into work today, or the cat needs to go to the vet or something, these types of things, there's no time for that, because the world has got to keep moving that way. So when I hear things, once again, like, I'm assuming you're making it in jest as well, but it is tough to be looking at from the outside in and just be like, this guy is he's crazy. It's just all these kinds of labels. He doesn't care. I think that's the thing that disturbs people the most.
I wasn't so much worried about offending him as I was notating that we have a billionaire class in our world, not just the U.S., but in our world. And it's very interesting to look at them from a psychological perspective, because once you have $200 million in the bank, you can buy whatever you want. So what drives them to say, no, I want to have $200 billion in the bank?
Well, it's getting more shit done. It's getting more shit done.
Right, but for whose benefit? Now, some of what you're talking about is just management style, and if anybody is listening to this and you've had a boss, chances are they were like all bosses.
They were mean to you.
You got to be the bad guy. You got to be, because your business is going to die if you're not efficient and you're not watching, everything, carefully. And the workers are, like everybody's self-interest, comes first. So it's that's normal. I mean, I've had plenty of bosses that I got along with really well, but they were really just like harsh, mean a-holes, sometimes even liars, to get you to work on.
They were cheap.
Yeah, notoriously cheap, right. Even though like they might have a lot, they might have a lot of money and they might have a lot of possessions and stuff. So you wonder, right? Now when you take it to the hundreds of billions of dollar level, you just get to this point where it's like the Catholic Church has weighed in on this, and it's been like, not the current pope is new, but it was the last 3 popes in a row that looked at the wealth disparity that we have, particularly in the US, and they say, they were updating the 7 deadly sins, and they said, at this point we are officially announcing from the Vatican that accumulation of obscene wealth to the point where that it hurts the rest of society, by taking all that money out of the circulating economy, is detrimental, and that is a modern day sin. And when that happened, like Fox News and everybody said, oh, the Pope is a commie, and they just like threw the Pope under the bus, which was amazing, because if you're Catholic, you're supposed to think that the Pope is holy and that they're speaking for God and all that kind of stuff. And, it just kind of put a wrench in the works, and that, it's still going on now because, just the European attitude towards wealth disparity, in general is, a lot different from the US, where we just like, no, there's no limit to how much you can accumulate. And it doesn't matter how much you're hoarding, as opposed to, the middle class having that money to circulate around and create jobs and stuff. So, we have this, and it gets very political very quickly. But, I just want to point out that, when it comes to Bill Gates, Elon Musk, you all know the names. There is something in them that drives them. And it's just like me, when I can't find the right pencil, and it's got to be that one, pencil I'm looking for. Where's that damn pencil? And you turn the house upside down, right? It's because it's like, no, it's got to be right. It's that with these guys. Like, look at when they get really, really old, right? I'm talking about Berkshire Hathaway. What's his name? The
Warren Buffett.
Warren Buffett, right? So if I'm correct, he's in his 80s already, right? Super old guy, right? And he's one of the richest guys in history, and I think he's above 100 billion, I want to say, but he's definitely up there. Why wouldn't he just be on a sprawling estate with his grandchildren all around him, doing fun things all day, playing croquet and then cooking, and now we're gonna make popcorn, and just and allowing other people to have the benefit of his wealth and all that. But instead of doing all that, he puts on his suit and tie, he gets into his town car, goes down to Wall Street every single day, and he stares at a bunch of screens, and he figures out what company we're going to acquire, or what stocks we're going to buy and sell, and what we're going to put on our list. And then everyone's following him in the market. So what drives somebody that's got hundreds of billions of dollars to get up at 6 a.m. every day, 5 a.m?
Passion for it.
Yeah, but he's already at the top.
It's just, I mean, what you just said is got to be probably one of the most ludicrous things you've ever said to my ears. All I'm going to say is, why should somebody so committed to their passion have to stop once they have accumulated a gross numerical financial status? Why would you want to relegate somebody to the backyard of a mansion cooking hot dogs near a pool that's that good at what he does and that passionate?
Well, the reason that's a great question. The reason why is because that's the number one thing that most people aspire to, is to retire and then just to have a life
Not me.
of leisure. And
Not
no, not
me.
me either. Not me either. But I don't want to do.
It's
I don't.
death.
I don't want to.
Retirement is death.
Well, you are driven. I'm driven. A lot of people are driven, but it's not to do hostile takeovers of KB Toys so that you can kill 80,000 jobs, right? Like just to get more money and pad your that number, which is just a
So
number.
we should force them into early retirement before they do any more havoc on the world.
I never said anything about a law or a regulation. All I said is, what's wrong with these people? Like,
they're passionate, Jake. They're just passionate. Leave them the fuck alone. Literally.
Okay, well,
leave them the fuck alone. Who is next in line? I mean, he's already retired. He stepped down from president, but I think he's still a major holder in the chairman position. I don't know if he's actually the chairman. He might still be the chairman, but he does have somebody who has replaced him. And can you imagine being the human being that replaces Warren Buffett? It's impossible. It's impossible. It's impossible. It's impossible. Right. I mean, when Charlie Munger's died, that was a huge hit to Berkshire Hathaway, because he is one half of the a team that Buffett and Munger's made in order to do and accumulate what it is that they have done and accumulated. So now Berkshire Hathaway is sitting on a teetering pinpoint where somebody else, a human being, has to come in and do what they not only did, but Charlie's dead. But explain to me who's going to replace Warren Buffett.
Well, I use Warren Buffett because he's one of the older guys, right?
Your age, what's it?
Right,
ageist?
Right. But let's counter. Let's kind of combine this with what the Catholic Church is saying, right?
Oh.
I mean, it's not just the Catholic Church. It's every grumbling, socialist out there. There's too much wealth disparity. We could feed, all the hungry. We could provide health care for the entire country with what these guys just have sitting in a bank somewhere. So there's that, and that that's just a difference of opinion of how society should be ordered. But Warren Buffett is probably the least of the corporate bad actors. Yeah, I mean, Warren Buffett is the one that coined the phrase, they call it the Buffett rule, that these billionaires are paying less in their taxes than their secretaries. They call that the Buffett rule, right? And so he was outspoken on stuff like that. And it's not really his problem that the government is bought off and that they refuse to raise taxes on the wealthy to afford the things that we claim that we need. But he's probably the least of them. I mean, the ones I'm worried about is Elon, because he just wants to be a trillionaire just because there's a different letter in front of the word of how much he's worth. And obviously there's guys like Trump that just want his name on everything. But there's also Zuckerberg worries me too, because the way he's running his company, it does, I can see Warren Buffett's making the case I'm my job is to try to help my shareholders, right? Like that's who I like. And if I screw over, some city in Arkansas that because we're investing in coal plants, and the slurry is going into their drinking water, that's not my fault. That's the local regulators who were easy to buy off. But this stock is profitable, so I'm just worried about my shareholders and how much we're going to take home this year, right? So you can see, like, there's kind of like a siloing of the ethics of what they're doing to make the money. And we can all appreciate that the guy is a financial genius, and sometimes he's had to risk incredible sums of money for the rewards, high risk, high reward, and some people don't have the stomach for that. And he's just been so successful. There's probably hundreds of guys that we don't know their names that tried to do what he did but failed, and they just like disappeared because they went broke. But I'm just talking about the drive, right? Once you have all that,
and all I'm asking, and what the way I'm helping you answer the question is, describe to me the person who replaces Warren Buffett. It's a great place to have the conversation.
There's no replacing Warren
There
Buffett.
You go. There you go.
Right. I mean,
so people take it as you will, how you would go about, seeing the future of the American and international financial structure.
Well, and so and I'm thinking about this as we're taking it back to our story, right? Because when I get a new AI tool and I'm saying, well, there's this family, the D. Huberton family,
right,
and
right.
So in the latest like app I got, I found this pretty good app called Kimi, Kimi, and it's like Asian, and I think it's Chinese, but I find it to be a lot more helpful, and I'm using it, so I have to bring it up to speed, right? And because I'm just using it for organization, and every time it tries to write something creative, I'm like, no, don't make stuff up, just ask questions. And like I'm driving, I just need a hands-free secretary to just like help me just get these ideas down. So I'm telling it that there's this D. Huberton family, and they're going to be exploring space because they want to send out mining missions, right? They want to do mining in space. They want to be the first one to capitalize on all the minerals and all the richness and everything. But they're also not even bothering to bring it back. They're just building out their robot armies so that they can terraform, and they can be the ones to like colonize Mars or Europa, right? And then they say, well, they're creating these innovations like the wind socks and the ability to cool nuclear energy and everything. And the AI mistakenly says they've developed so many benefits for humanity, and I'm like, no. I'm like, you gotta understand, these are the bad guys, right?
Oh my god.
and so that's why I keep bringing this back, right?
Right.
Because the billionaires that we have, like, because I think, right, like they complain like all politicians are corrupt. I was like, well, yeah, but you can't become a senator and wield so much power without having some kind of egocentric drive and some kind of like lust for money and power and everything. Like, you just would never get there. The average person would be like, why am they're not driven for that.
Right.
And the same thing with multi billionaires. It doesn't just happen to people. Like, even the lottery winners, like they fritter the money away like in 2 months, right?
Yeah.
So what is this drive, right? And how come we never, ever, no, not ever, see an example? I mean, maybe I'm missing one, but an example of somebody that accumulates all that money and then has the epiphany of
Howard Hughes.
Howard Hughes, the guy went into insanity. The guy grew his nails long.
Maybe I think he had the same problem that you're sort of illustrating right now, or same confliction. He was conflicted about being a genius and a wealthy one, and was able to do all these things. And yeah, he ended up with a phobia, which was humanity.
Right. He was a germ phobic, and he lived in an
Which is,
oxygen tent, and he
yeah.
grew his nails long, and he didn't cut his hair. Right. So he
Well,
just
that was
descended in-
superstition. He was worried. He was worried witches would get a hold of that stuff
right.
and put a curse on him.
It basically he descended into insanity. He was driven crazy. He was literally driven
Yeah.
bonkers, cracker. Right.
Yeah.
So still no example. I mean, Ted Turner. You have, you know, you have Bill making this fake pledge that when he dies, 90% of his money is going to go to charity. But meanwhile, you look a little bit more closely. This is Zuckerberg too, and it's all tied up in foundations that have strings attached to all the money. All of this stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because you mentioned this at the top, right? They don't care, and a lot of this is
I disagree with that.
they don't care about public perception. They don't care about public perception.
Everybody has to. Everybody has to.
Well, a lot of this drive, right, for money. I mean, there's money, and then there's like adulation, right? And it's two different things, really, right? I mean, you could have like somebody like Mother Teresa. She didn't have a dime, but she was sainted.
She was also not going after the dime,
right? But but she got like the highest level of human recognition and adulation.
She didn't care about that either.
Well, she got it.
She did it. Well, she didn't give a shit though. She didn't live her life for the public adulation of doing good. She understood. You know the story of Mother Teresa, since you brought up the Catholics.
Yeah. I know
how she got.
I know the outlines of, but
what is it? What's the outline? Why did she go out and do what she did?
To serve.
Yeah, but what happened to her?
You tell the story. I don't know.
It's not even a story. I don't even want to get into the story part of it. The simple fact is that she was touched by the teachings of Christ and being Christ-like. And so therefore she had this overwhelming feeling to serve humans. But what she found was the best people to serve were the ones who were without Christ.
Okay. So like conversions.
Yeah, but she was a missionary.
Right.
She didn't do any of this. She didn't do any of this in Europe. She didn't do any of this in Texas. She didn't do any of this in Paris or Tokyo or China. She did this in, right? Yeah, she went to the most horrendous places that our society deems so, to bring the teachings of Christ to those individuals.
Right.
That was it. That was it. And then when people were like, "Oh my God, you're the greatest thing in the world. We want to help you," she'd be like, "All right, go ahead and start helping me. Like, get dirty, get down here with these people because they need this teaching."
Right. Wash the feet. So right, and there's a contrast, right? Selflessness versus selfishness, and how this conversation all started. The me aspect of the billionaire family, or the multi-trillionaire family that we're inventing, which to be honest is based on the example that we're saying. Like, I'll just say it. Like, I think that these billionaires that I'm mentioning, maybe not like Warren Buffett. I don't want to put them in the same like category, but
yeah, because that's ignorant.
Right. They are they're sick. They have OCD, and they think that they're driven to just create as much money as possible and to see a number in their bank account always has to keep going up.
Yes, I disagree. I think you have it all backwards. I don't think the money is not. The money is really the working mechanic to being OCD and achieving perfection or making things right. You know what I mean? I don't think it's. I think they're completely the opposite. I really don't think. I just don't believe they're not money driven. They're problem solving driven. They see all of these problems. Maybe they're more like Mother Teresa than we have come to think of them, because neither one of us has ever had a conversation or come near to a conversation of sitting in a room with any of these individuals. We just have the known authority, because I have the platform that, you know, a dozen people could come and see, where I can then spew some kind of like rhetoric of what it is, like the labeling of what it is, which is to me like it's just a big waste of life for somebody who does that. In other words, because that shit changes all the time. But to be a good humanitarian like Mother Teresa is only to live by Christ's teaching, not, and it doesn't have to be Jesus and the Catholic Church and all this kind of stuff. It's just a teaching. It's just a be kind to others. Do the best that you can for others as you are, not spending so much time trying to break down other people who are more successful or more in the spotlight than others. That's unless that's what you're after, you know,
Well,
and you want to go about it. It's just a very big waste
yeah.
of time. It's a very big waste of time and energy. You could be doing
Well,
so much more good in the world, in my opinion.
Yeah, morality means different things to different people, right? Like Mother Teresa, it's like helping the poorest among us. But you know what I would want to say, like you know, the way I feel is if I won the lottery tomorrow, you know, what would I do with the money? A lot of people have that fantasy when you're online buying a ticket for the you know, Powerball or whatever, and you know. Well, you know, we have some real big challenges here, you know, like, you know, corrupt government. All right. So that would be a great thing to solve. Why not? How come the billionaires never want to solve the problem of corrupt government? Well, the reason is very simple, because they corrupt the government every single day and it benefits them every single day. So why would they want to fix that? Right. And like, you know, like we can talk about, you know, world leaders going back to the days of the kings and all that, right? Benevolent kings versus, you know, tyrannical kings, right? That's always been a conversation too. And you know, the benevolent kings, you know, you might have the people loving you, but you might not be running the kingdom, you know, as efficiently, or you know, or maybe you're not watching your back and you get conquered by somebody, right? So there's all these kind of things that, you know,
or your own family, basically, you know. Like one of my favorite stories, well, my favorite author and stories associated to this author is Shakespeare. As maybe pretentious as it is, my favorite story of all time is Hamlet. And when I found Hamlet in high school, my existential dread found a friend. But what I think Shakespeare, one of his great stories to give light to why we are the way we are, in power, government, and structure, family, let's say, is King Lear, and him splitting his kingdom into three equal places, if you will. Kurosawa did an amazing version of it in Ran, R-A-N, where the one big son, you know, the oldest son, is the one that figures like, oh, this is easy. All I have to do is kill my other brothers, and then I'll have the whole kingdom. This is easy. The second one becomes paranoid, you know, like, shit. So he starts making all these really, really shitty decisions. And the third youngest son says, fuck this. I don't want anything to do with this, Dad. I just want to be your son. And of course, then King Lear is like, well, you're my weakest son then. So he basically chastises and exiles that son. And the story goes on. You know, the two older brothers basically squander, kill, blood, you know, blah, 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 blah. The father is dying and comes into contact with the weakest youngest son, who actually helps him, you know, and they die together and blah, blah, blah. You know, Greek Shakespearean tragedy, which is why the story was publicly proclaimed as one of the, you know, at that time, one of the greatest shows, is because it was doing, God forbid me, or God forgive me for saying this, is kind of what you and I are trying to do, you leading very much the way in a
a story that could cause younger people or just people on the average read it, interpret it, and then say, well, like, why couldn't the Dehubritons do this? Or why didn't so, you know what I mean? Like it's there in front of us in a form of entertainment. But at the same time, you should, not should, I don't want to put this on anybody. I do it, is, kind of walk away thinking, like scratching your head, like, could it have been done a different way? Like, that's one of the things, Jake, I'm really heavily anticipating with what you and I are accomplishing. We're not trying to accomplish anything. We have very much accomplished, because in 2 months, we will be hitting our fourth year anniversary mark. In other words, we have been in 4 years at this, meeting every Sunday, trudging along, pushing pages. We will definitely have our DOOMMAGS #1 up and out and together. But I know you feel the same way as I do, is that, as much as we put out our sort of like, let's say, opposing points of view on said subject or these types of things, at the end of the day, what we'll be leaving behind is a huge amount of documented creative processing that I would hope causes many individuals around the world to interpret as, well, if they could do it, then why don't I do it? But I'm going to do it my way and differently.
Right. Well, we've found I've found 2 people drawing in split screen. Your Renaissance Angel guy.
Yeah. They're not working on the same thing.
Right. But at least they had 2 guys working split screen. Right.
And that's what Ralph is. I just talked to Ralph this morning, or I responded to Ralph. I wonder if he responded to me in Instagram.
Ralph Nixon.
Nope. Yeah, Ralph Nixon Jr. No, he hasn't. But I've asked him to be a guest in an upcoming episode. While we'll still do the 3 hour and go from there. But he is super in line with us, and I truly believe he sees us as a kindred spirit, other than just like making cool comics. I think he might, and this is one of my questions I want to ask him, is how he kind of sees us, is because we're only doing this to ourselves every Sunday. We're not trying to do this every day and make a success out of it. He's a machinist. He wants to / has to, go to the job, the quote unquote, what we frame as a real job, but he's trained as that and he enjoys it. I mean, his now posts alternate between what's happening at the machine shop and what's going on with Under God, the comic. I mean, I adore that, because it seems so much more rational to put people, let's say, outside of what we're doing, to encourage them to come into what we're doing it their way, but not stress themselves to a point where, they get burned out, or they get angry, or they, become disenfranchised. That's not what creativity is about. And it's not even, but creativity is not even about being successful.
Right. I mean, we are, our whole example here is, for people that are going to snicker and say these guys have been at this for 4 years and they don't have a comic out. Yeah, we're only doing it 4 years times 1 hour, right, a week. Right?
Yeah. Until we started doing the 3 hours, which I think
not like 4 years, like 40-hour weeks.
Sure,
honestly.
Sure.
But also the point is the process, right? We have these great conversations, right? Like,
hell yeah.
And we're just enjoying our
love you for
reading comics, right? And we're arguing. It's great, right? Like, I can argue with Kurt, right? Like, why would you cut any of these billionaires any slack that are ruining our society? And he's like, these are our economic engines. These are our geniuses. We can't live without these people. And I'm like, these people are assholes, right? Okay. So we have all these great conversations, and there's a lot there to talk about. Every single day we're seeing something new happen, and it affects you know, the real world, and it affects the sci-fi world that we're building. So you know, that's this is just like what we're trying to do is, like, you know, fill our time so that by the time we die, we have something that we can be proud of, and, you know, have some discussions, go head to head, have some guests, look at comics, look
Well,
at
I
really
think,
history.
yeah, I think one of the sadder parts for anybody coming to hang out with us is that we're not here to entertain you. I don't show up. I don't show up on Sunday mornings going, I wonder what I could do or say to entertain people so we get more likes. I literally write lists of stuff down, which most of the time I lose. I'm going to get better with having like a floating Word document so I can start. It's like, oh, I got to tell Jake about this new thing I'm going to watch tonight, or oh, I wonder if Jake watched that thing I sent him.
Yeah.
I want to respond to what Jake said, because, like I said, my whole approach to hitting Sunday at 10 o'clock is I'm going to Jake's house to hang out, talk about comic books and everything else. Back in the day when we were kids, when, you know, you and I didn't live in the same neighborhood, let alone the same state, but all my friends and I, you know, we would all go to the comic book store together on usually a Saturday morning, sit outside waiting for Craig to come and open it up. Then we would all, you know, it'd take us an hour for all of us to make our decisions and buy with what scrubby, grubby money we had, you know, squandered around.
You're in no hurry to get out of there. No hurry at all.
Not at all. Not at all. So by the time we get home, you know, we get to somebody's house and we all start reading our own comics. But then we would sit in a circle, usually in people's basements, and you would put all your comics out in the circle. And then you would pick up one of your comics and start reading it. But I could go through my comics and then go through your comics and then my brother's comics. And you know, and then the conversation would go from like, you know, who could kick whose ass when it came to like Wolverine or, you know, or Daredevil. But then it would also, as things went along, you know, questions would come up about like girls and, you know, when you get your driver's license and, you know, just different or TV shows or trying to get into a R-rated movie, which is the best theater. You know what I mean? Like, and that's what this is. This is not only it feels like to me, but it is almost exactly like it was. And it was like our last episode, which we've had Alex Turbin on like so many times. It's having like a third person in the basement at Jake's house.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Well, I think Kurt is admitting that he's regretting to a childlike state, which I think we're all doing in some form or the other. But you know, but we're also talking about some heady stuff. You know, I think about this kind of stuff all week. You know, just to what you know, worry about like, well, what am I going to put in the story? And you know, we'll bring up a discussion on Saturday or Sunday. Maybe we'll get some comments in the chat. You know, today, in case people don't know, it's like the biggest snowstorm in like 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
And I don't know what you got. We're about 5-6. We're about 5-6 inches right here in New York.
Same thing. Yeah, same thing.
Yeah. But you know, there's like tons of people out of power already. And,
don't say that. Don't say that.
Oh no, yeah, thousands of people.
Don't.
If you put on the weather channel.
Saboteur. Good morning.
Saboteur's there.
Yeah.
Hey, Saboteur's there. Yeah. So you know, I was a little apprehensive about like maybe the signal isn't going to be great today.
Yeah, me too.
So many people are using the internet today, and then also like, are any power lines going down, because that's gonna screw up transmission. You know, the signal has to go like all the way across the Atlantic here, and then, you know, everywhere else to wherever the servers are. So so far so good, and you know, hopefully everyone's just taking it easy, staying indoors and staying safe. But this is as we're talking today, Sunday, January 25th, Snowpocalypse 3000.
2026.
And yeah, so some interesting themes came up with my research this week, and I want to put it out there. If anybody's listening, leave a comment, whether you're watching this in the future. Like, is there an example of somebody that got really, really, was driven to get really, really rich? I'm talking billions of dollars, and then turn around and did something good for the middle class or the poor or the rest of society, like you're supposed to do in Christianity, like, help the least among you, blah, 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 stuff like that. Or is every single one of them just another example of, self, just driven, just for themselves and their friends? Because when you talk about someone like Elon, colonizing space, creating a line of electric vehicles that really just pushed us into the future. When you talk about neural transplants that are helping, like that's something you can argue, like, oh, they're helping the paralyzed, right? They're helping paralyzed people with the Neuralink, right? They can now control their computers even though they don't have use of their arms or legs, right? So, that's probably something that Elon himself would point to. But, by and large, who are they trying to help, and what are they driven by? What are their purposes? And this is important for the future, because the DeHuberty family is going to be generations and generations of this. And once you have a patriarch, that's got so much money, it just becomes like an aristocracy, because in the US anyway, you can leave the lion's share of that money now to your children or whoever you want, and the government is taking less and less and less. It was different like 50 years ago in the 90s, and before that, the government would take a huge amount of it. But it was literally the billionaires themselves, including the Waltons and the Mellons and the Mellonscapes and all that got the inheritance tax changed in America, because it's so easy to corrupt the government. You can just write your own laws, and that's what they did. And so now, if you have $1 million in the bank, you can get, at 5% interest, you can get $50,000 a year to live on, and you never have to go to work or do anything. You have all your bills paid. If you have $10 million in the bank, then you're getting $500,000 a year just on interest and never have to work again. And so if you can leave this money down to the next generation, it's generations of people that never have to work again. And sometimes it's funny and ironic that the kids of these billionaires do not have the drive at all, and you never hear about them again, or else maybe they just quietly work on a board of a company, and they it's nothing like what the old man did. But the fact that they can just keep all that money, and then sometimes you do have the son who becomes bigger than the father, like Trump is a good example. And sometimes they have a chip on their shoulder because their dad was, such a powerhouse, and they felt inadequate, and they're like working through daddy issues. But the idea of benevolent billionaires, goes back to benevolent kings. You just, you hope for it, because when you have all that power, you want the power to benefit the many rather than the few. But reality.
It's a good fairy tale.
Yeah, reality.
That's what it sounds like. That's what it always sounds like to me. Is because my answer to your question is we're human beings or human animals. We have an evolutionary scaling that we're basically just like 3.5 days out of a big mud puddle. And being baboons that ate their own shit. You know what I mean? Like we're not the super geniuses that I think we try to make ourselves out to be. And we have a long way to go. And, I think it's also part of what we're experiencing socially is that, I don't know about you, but I kind of grew up with the idea that if you think something's good's going to happen, think the worst. And with all of this AI, it seems like, I watch probably every night, like at least 5 to 10 takes on what's going on. I don't usually watch all the way through, because usually in the first like 3 or 4 minutes, people pretty much call themselves out about what it is. They're just trying to get you to watch longer, so it gives them more of a
Engagement
financial benefit at the end, like we all like to do. But I think there's like we're such a divide with everything. Like it's always this 50-50. It's the tech giants are always going to keep us suppressed. And then there's these people on the other side I watch that are like, if you've got half a brain or like, let's say each half of your brain is like your left and right lobes are like cognitively functioning at like a base IQ level, come up with a problem and start chatting with GPT about a problem you see going on, and then try to like implement it, because you can now. You can create apps, you can create organizations, groups, companies. You can make a lot of these things happen. And I think we're going to be about 10 years down the road where we have a generation that comes into play where we're going to be like, well, what the fuck do we call these people? And are they beneficial to society? This type of stuff. But, we're in this cusp of evolutionary shifting. And it is because of the technology and us being basic primates trying to deal with things that are just light years away from us in cognition, like being able to grok it, which is a Robert Heinlein slur or a slang, which means like to get it. Grok means to get it in a scientific a term. So I also though find it to be like extremely exciting to be at the age of, I think I'm 56. I don't know. We're still trying to figure out if I'm 56 or 57. That I don't have to deal with all the things for the last 30 years I dealt with. And now I've got a good like 30 years ahead of me. And with what I've already been doing, which I would like to share with you in transition, if you don't mind topically, is I did start playing with some of the video and styling, came into some really cool Italian superhero movies from the 60s. I'm going to start watching tonight and everything. It feels to me like anything is possible. And I think that terrifies a lot of people. Are you terrified, Jake, of like anything can happen? Like when you kind of sit down and existentially reflect on that or somewhere around it?
Well, look at my screen and you'll see why I am freaking out. This came out yesterday, Wired magazine.
There you go.
AI-powered disinformation swarms are coming for democracy. They already have, and in countries like Haiti and everything, or some African countries,
Right.
it's just like it's just a takeover, and I'm writing that into the story here.
Right.
I mean, what we're going to be dealing with, right? Like I was having an argument with my brother yesterday.
Don't do that.
We were talking about this whole Greenland thing, and the way that it's being reported in the U.S. versus the way that it's being reported anywhere else, like the BBC or other countries. It's night and freaking day.
Sure.
Right. And if people are just tuning in, the president is trying to acquire Greenland. And he spoke about military options on the table, but now he took military options off the table, and he wants to buy Greenland or make some kind of deal where the U.S. gets control of Greenland. And Denmark, who owns Greenland right now, wants to retain ownership of it, at least on paper. But they obviously had no problem, over the years. We've had military bases on Greenland for decades, and I don't think we have them now the way we used to, but we've had 11 different military bases on Greenland over the years. And, if they're an ally, we can just put another one there whenever we feel like it. So, and the problem is, like, the current administration was threatening them, and we're telling them we're just going to take it, because we need it, and if we don't take it, Russia's going to take it, or China's going to take it, and just like those kind of threats. So I was arguing with my brother about. I mean, the thing I want to bring up here is, how we get information, how we read things, how we understand things, and our complete inability, including myself, to see through things and to analyze things critically. We don't do a good job of it in the U.S. Right. We do a terrible job of it, and I'm a teacher, and I teach kids every day. So I can tell you it's getting worse and worse out there. And my wife is a teacher too, and my daughter's a teacher too. And it's getting tougher and tougher to, just to get kids to have the healthy skepticism they need of a claim when they see something in print and it looks, official and looks pretty, that they just swallow it hook, line, and sinker. And no better illustration of that was one year when I got roped in to teach summer school, and they told me I could teach art, which is the only reason I signed up. But when I got there, they said, "Oh no, you're teaching English, ELA, to special ed, so self-contained special ed group, and that the principal and the assistant principal is not on site, so that if I had any complaints or anything, send them an email and maybe they'll get back to you." So basically, a whole summer, I'm in this classroom with this ELA class, special ed ELA class. So what did I do? I taught them all kinds of stuff, and I would bring in these interesting things that they were interested in, and we would read them sometimes together and answer questions, and I made lessons. And one day I decided, let me see, because I had this one kid that was not skeptical about anything. He came up to me one day and he said, "Mr. Jacobs, can you tell me where I can get the arms?" And I'm like, "What arms? What are you talking about?" The kid was 12 years old. And he was like, "The arms, for Dr. Octopus."
Wow, nice.
And nice question. Perfect question for a 12-year-old.
I'm like, those arms are fake. That's a movie. It's not real. You can't buy the arms. Oh, really? So then I realized, I was like, how many hours a day are you on video games? Right. Ooh. And he was like, basically all day long. Like, he's special ed, and he's like, sometimes he was a hard, kid to deal with, like, a tough cookie. Right. And I'm sure his mom, or his parents just like put him in front of a tablet and just, thank God he's being quiet and he's being, he's like, babysitting. But at the same time, that tablet is molding his mind so that he come into school and ask where he can buy the arms, not that he has any money, but, and it's so funny because the kid's name was Jack Daniels. He was literally named after the beverage. The beverage, right? Probably why he's alive in the first place. That wasn't his. That was just his. His first and middle name. I forget what his other name was. But the point being,
on the rocks.
They're not right. They're not skeptical at all. They believe anything you say, especially if it comes from a teacher, right? If you've established yourself as an authority, anything you could. And so that's wrong, right? Teachers are wrong, and everybody's human, and you have to protect yourself. So one day I came in with this one-page reading. It was like a back and front with a couple of questions on the back. And it was like talking about this Roswell, right? And that we had discovered a bunker of aliens that are living in Roswell underneath a government facility, and they've been there for decades. And I was teaching the kids, and I was answering their questions, and I was teaching everything as though it was 100% real. And do you know, not one of them
Believed you.
at the end, right? There's only like 10 minutes, 5 minutes left. At the end, I had to tell them, like, this was a lesson in disinformation, right? Like, you have to be on your guard because, you might hear things, whether on purpose or not, that are not true. And you have to be skeptical of them. I said, everything I told you today was not true. There are no aliens, and it was just that the article I brought in was written by one of these like publications, the 14 Times or whatever, and it was like written in an authoritative voice, and they said, government sources have already verified this, right? And that's all they needed to hear. Like, oh, because I'm like, who said this is all true? And it says right here, government sources have verified that. I'm like, yeah, but who wrote the article? Have you ever heard of that person or that publication? And I was fighting against the wind here because, first of all, I was dealing with like, seventh graders, special ed seventh graders. So, it's not like, high school kids or graduate level or anything. So, but the point is like those kids who, they're adults now, and they didn't have the tools by seventh grade that summer to protect themselves against disinformation. And there's people that believe this stuff hook, line, and sinker, right? Absolutely, about aliens, about anything. We got
I do.
people that believe
I do.
viruses and vaccines and flat earth and you name it. And there's hundreds and thousands of people that swallow it whole, just because they don't have the critical thinking skills to question it, and they might not have a scientific basis, and they might not have just the common sense to recognize that they're being manipulated for clicks or profit or whatever. I mean, every day we hear about these lonely old people that are sweet talked out of everything they own.
Let's not go there. That makes me very
Yeah.
angry. It really turns my stomach. That I think is more evil than any major corporation out there doing whatever it's
Elder
doing.
abuse. Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
not elder abuse, dude. It's just point blank evil. Like that definitively is the highest. Well, it's not the highest point of evil because we could go into some other things, but that it just breaks my heart.
Yeah, that happened to I had an ex, and her grandma was loaded. Well, yeah, her grandmother owns a couple of Jackson Pollocks because she was pals with Jackson Pollock and his wife up in Long Island. And she had a Jackson Pollock like hanging on the wall of her house when I was there. It was worth $10 million, or if not more, probably 5 times that. So she my girlfriend told me one day that grandma got a call, and then she invited some guy over, and he got her to sign some papers, and she had some real estate in like Maine, I think, and she didn't want to talk about it anymore because it was just gone. It was just gone, the whole. And and that happens because she was lonely, and she was a little bit of a drinker, and she was old and helpless, and the guy was forceful, and just got her to sign a couple of things. So there's people that do this every single day, and we wouldn't be getting all this spam email if somebody wasn't responding to it.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, I got to jump out real quick to go to the bathroom, and then I want to come back and share some very exciting Italian Superman comic movies that I'm going to be watching tonight.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see if there's any comments in the chat. Raz is there. Good morning, Raz. 5558. Wow, great looking page. Good morning, cartoonist. Yeah, Kurt is doing some fun stuff. He's putting his gray tones in. I'm doing some not so much fun stuff. I'm stuck doing the word balloons of this comic, but I'm on page 5 of 6, so I'm getting there to the end fast, and I'm just trying to make nice letters. We have a better system going forward, so it won't be this time consuming in the future. like I have a font finally, but for now we're kind of stuck in this old workflow where I have these old-fashioned letter styles here. So, Kurt, yeah, I came across a Turkish superhero movie.
Which one?
And you know what? I screenshotted it because I was afraid you were going to ask me that, and I don't speak Turkish.
Well, what was it, like Spider-Man or Superman? Because there's like,
yeah, it had all of them in there.
Okay, yeah. Yep.
Did I save it? Actually, I thought I screenshotted it.
Well, you remember we talked about this probably like over a year ago, but I had gotten into the Danger Diabolique, which is it's just so just to preface, I have found my favorite time of creativity overall: music, writing, movies, and even comic books. 70s probably more so with some of the comic books, but Sword and Sorcery comes out around the same time as 1968, 67, 68, 69, the summer of love, people. But it just seems like this is like the nuclear family, Eisenhower ideology of like, a chicken in every pot, and a retirement golden watch, this whole like fucking shitburger everybody was being sold, and then the children of the baby boomers were becoming hippies and sort of like, but it was so challenging, and they were being so challenging. It's like everything that was getting pushed out there, even through mainstream, was bonkers. Now tonight I'm going to be watching these comic book movies. They are comic books, but what they are is Diabolique was written by one woman in Italy. And it was a serial like weekly or something to that extent, and was so popular it ended up getting its own movie. And actually even has a cartoon from 97 to 2000 something. But there was two other sort of like competitors, just like any kind of comic book. If you had a popular Superman, you'd have to come up with, something Wonder competitive. Man. Yeah. They had Criminal, which is with a K. Super Argo. He's actually the next one. He has 3 movies. He's on the list right after Satanic with a K. And what it is this woman has been deformed, and she goes to this scientist. I mean, this is like just bonkers town, right? And gets this magic pill, becomes this super hot, swinging 60s lady.
You got to bring it closer up. You got to bring
swinging lady that is like the absolute female antithesis of James Bond, but with the Diabolique kind of like say like a sensitivity where they have even looser morals, in the sense of like being, what I want and everything. But this is 1968, and we're going to try to actually hunt down the comic book. But yeah, I mean, just
a lot more recent. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, this is 19. The comic would have came out in 67, 68.
Oh, okay.
So this is 1968, and then this reminds me of a movie called The Female's Deadlier Than the Male. I think that's how it goes, which is based on a series of James Bond-esque stories. But yeah, I've been actually yesterday, I spent a little bit of time chomping down and getting into these, they call them Italian comic book movies, or Supermen. They call them Superman movies. Is that's how the reviewing of them come across. So I'll definitely have that to report back on you. Have you watched anything on the way of movie, television?
Yeah, well, some YouTube explainers. I love those. And last night I rewatched for the first time in probably since it came out, Minority Report with
Whoa.
Tom Cruise. And you guys might remember that it was a pretty nice sci-fi movie with great
Philip K. Dick.
effects. Yeah, it was based on a Philip K. Dick short story. But what I didn't realize is that it was directed by Spielberg. And
he needed the cash.
What's that?
He needed the cash.
It was not a bad movie. I mean, Tom Cruise and the other guy, Colin Farrell.
Yep.
They're pretty boys, but they're they're the dialogue was kind of sophisticated. The story was kind of like twists and turns with surprise endings, and the action. Everyone saw it. They probably just haven't seen it recently. It was all about the pre-cogs and the pre-crime unit, and it had a interesting message for nowadays. Where we have this like way of anticipating crimes by data mining people and surveilling people, and I think that was the message. This, and you want to hear something funny? They made a reference to this one scene. It's like yes, the pre-crime division was begun in the year 2026.
Oh shit, that's hot. That's hot.
I was like, wow, here we go.
Nice.
So not the worst movie. And one thing that I didn't remember is because like all of these Philip K. Dick and some of these other writers, they were kind of like this hard-boiled, edgy detective kind of stuff, right? And in this case, like the cop was on the run, and there was all of these surveillance things where you could just be very easily detected, and he had to literally get new eyeballs implanted, in him in order to like get access to the precogs and to do his mission, to save himself. But the way they had it was like all the government buildings, and this is an aesthetic that Spielberg was probably looking for, was that all the government buildings were like shiny and they had all this great technology and like you remember that advanced like screen that Tom Cruise put on those little gloves, and he was moving things around the screen. And people remember these things, and they also remember that the cars were driving up the side of the building to go into the parking spot in the apartment, right? Stuff like that. The cars were great. The traffic was all just AI because everything was going really, really fast, but it was really organized, right? And it was all orderly. So, a couple of great takeaways in this movie, but the thing that I was struck by that I didn't remember was that the contrast between all of the government facilities and the government buildings and the homes that everyday people lived in, that they were all represented in the movie as being really run down and seedy and dirty and like literally just rats, eating stuff, and we've seen like Gotham City like portrayed like really dark and gritty and noir and everything, but here they were going out of their way to make it look like the everyday people are just like living in squalor,
like LA.
Well, you talk about in real life.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that Beverly Hills was like that, but yeah, sure. Like I think there was like a message there that was trying to contrast the masses with the I guess the privileged or something. So interesting movie, interesting message. The female lead was a little disappointing to me. She she was I forget who it was. It was really attractive actress, but they like dowdied her up really bad. I don't know why they did that. She was supposed to be like the mom of the kid that was lost, and Tom Cruise is looking at all these video projections of his kid, and he's, you know, he's wallowing in self pity and stuff. So it's yeah, that I saw that. I also saw like some a bunch of kind of like mute behind the music things for you know, for the type of music I listen to, like all girl garage bands of the 60s. That's always fun. Did you know that Janice Pennington, the spokesmodel from The Price is Right, that used to, that just walk around in outfits and just like, help the contestants, bid on their showcase showdown and everything? Janice Pennington was in a band. She was in a boy girl band in the 60s called was it the She Trinity? No, it was a different one. It was called the Models. And I love it when you find out that these famous people and actresses were in these garage bands, because I love garage music. And we had a gig on Friday night, went pretty well in Otto's Shrunken Head in New York City, so that was fun. So yeah, just been a busy boy. I watch all these things nonstop. Sometimes I'm drawing and just like kind of listening, but I check those out. And we also were watching this. I was doing a lot of drawing, but my wife was watching of this The Night Manager, which is a Netflix series that has 2 seasons, and it was pretty entertaining. But
Yeah,
the
we've been looking
star
at
of it,
yeah, we're looking to
yeah,
get into that.
the star of it is Tom Hiddleston, who was Loki, and I don't know why, but the girls love Loki. Like even the girls in my school, when Avengers came out, they weren't talking about Thor, they weren't talking about Captain America, all these good-looking actors and everything, all muscly and everything. Nope, they were
He's a
talking about
hottie.
Loki. They love Loki.
He's a
I don't know.
hottie. Come on.
So
Jake.
he's got his own series called The Night Manager, and it's not half bad. It's like some good, like it's kind of like James Bondish in a little way, but different. And I don't know.
Well, that's how I get my wife to watch that kind of stuff. Hottie.
Yeah, hot guys, right? And there was also this series that Lisa was watching called Landman, and it's one of the best.
Billy Bob Thornton.
Yeah, Billy Bob, right? And I'm just like listening in the background while she's watching it, and sometimes I'm drawing, sometimes I'm eating, cooking, doing dishes, whatever. But what I didn't like about that one, because she's watched like every season. I don't even know. I think she might have finished it. I just like heard it in the background, and then like when you get sucked in, like you go to the bathroom and you're like, what happened to the guy with the truck? Yeah, right. And then she's got to explain it to me, right? Like, aha. We sucked even you and even the doubter. But what I didn't like about Landman is because, I'm a very renewable climate change guy, and it's kind of like humanizing the oil barons and making them very, very sympathetic, kind of in a way that The Sopranos did with mob people and mob families. And I have these questions about like good versus evil in fictional stories. Should we be romanticizing the bad guy? And I know that's a huge thing nowadays, where we romanticize the bad guy. I mean, you can talk about The Godfather, as probably one of the greatest examples in history of that. Of you're rooting for Al Pacino and De Niro and everything, but they're like killing people left and right. So I was thinking the same thing when I was watching Landman, because you watch it for like a half an hour, and you can't help it. You're like caught up and you sympathize with the character. But meanwhile, these are people that are just like, they're doing the fossil fuel thing, and they're like, pulling all this stuff out of the ground that's better off in the ground if you listen to every, like, the consensus of scientists for the last whatever, and why don't we have a Netflix thing about a family that's struggling to put renewables up on the roofs of people?
Boring.
Right, exactly. It's boring, and and that's the thing. I mean, I don't know where Billy Bob is on this, because most Hollywood actors are more like, tree huggy types, but there's you get your Charlton Hestons and your Ronald Reagans, and there's no hard fast rule for every single person. And I just wonder, like, are there more people say, wow, I want to get into the oil industry?
If you're brought
I
up
mean,
in the family. I grew up in Texas, and my mother's father in Oklahoma had an oil pump in his land, and he was getting a check for it. So,
exactly.
I mean, he wasn't complaining about it.
Well, but you can, right. But then you it brings up all these great issues once again. Like, there used to be all these ma and pa drillers, right? And they were benefiting off this. But now there's just like incredible consolidation, just like farming, just like retail, just like everything else. And these people can't make a living anymore. Even if you own the land, you have to make some kind of onerous deal to pull it out, because the apparatus is all owned and controlled by these, by conglomerates. And so, there was a little bit of that, like, Billy Bob's character is, able to kind of like negotiate that and help the lady who inherits it from her dead husband, and blah, blah, blah. It goes on from there. But, I think that the mass media, like Netflix, who's owned by a billionaire, his name is, I think his name is Reed Hastings, is the multi-billionaire that owns Netflix. And he is one of these really rich and powerful guys too, that you don't hear as much about, because he's not so public facing as like Zuckerberg and some of these other guys. But everything they put on the air, has a decision about, like, the message and the morality and good versus evil, and what are we going to portray. Same thing with like adult content, same thing with crimes, and same thing with portrayals of political bias, one way or the other. So it's always interesting. And I think sci-fi has always had a conscience, right? You talk about Star Trek and the good of the many versus the good of the few. You talk about Star Wars and the dark side and the Empire versus the rebellion, right? And there's so much like symbolism in there, for real life.
And now the Empire owns Star Wars.
Well, it's owned by Disney.
There's a fucking empire. It's the greediest media empire there is out there, man.
Wait until Paramount completes its merger, and then it's going to be the second greediest.
Sure, whatever. But
Paramount, Universal, all of these, it's all just like, it's all going one direction, and the direction is the DOOMMAGS. So,
isn't that a boy band? Isn't it One Direction a boy band?
It's all going one direction. Yeah, it's all going in one direction. So, yeah, that's that was kind of a little bit of my week. I didn't read. I read a couple of comics. I've been getting into this kind of like collection that I got in the mail. It's called Crom the Barbarian. Maybe you've heard of it.
No. Do share. What do you got going? And before you do share, good morning, Raz. Good morning, Raz. 5558.
Yes. I got the what's called Crom Collected. Is it called?
I don't know. What do you show? You got a cover or something you can show people? Like, am myself included? I mean, there's a lot of Crom product. There's a lot of Crom product out there.
It's upstairs, but it's like Yeah, this crazy dude
Oh,
put
is it?
together this
Is it? Wait a
public
second. Wait a second.
domain character, and then he gets
Is it
like
this?
20 other people. Yeah, that's it right there.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. This is so cool. This is such a cool. How far did you get into, and what did you find?
I'm probably 75%, maybe 70% of the way
Are
through.
you
So
are you reading like front to
I
back?
didn't read the prose like pages. I just read the comic sequence pages. But you know, it's a lot of different styles. It's all one genre, which is like sword of sorcery, or else maybe like a futuristic kind of like flashback scenes that throw back to the same idea. But it's really interesting. You got Ken Landgraf in there. You got some
Hell
real
yeah!
pro kind of like European styles in there, and then you got your weekend warriors are in there, well represented too, and every style in between. A lot of indie kind of like diversity there, right? So at the end of the day, you have a really thick book, and people should pay, what is it, like $30, $35 or something.
35 right now, but it does
Yeah,
go on
you get
sale occasionally.
you get a lot. You actually get a lot for your money. I mean, you
Yep.
cannot sit there and take the whole thing in a single sitting. So I would recommend it to people, especially if you like barbarian follies and you like sword and sorcery. Crom is a character that's kind of pretty much interchangeable with Conan. Conan refers to Crom as a god in his realm, but it was developed by Gardner Fox, and it was right around the same time that Conan was developed. Gardner Fox beat Robert E. Howard to putting Crom in comic books. So Crom was in comic books in 1950, and Conan didn't get into a comic book until 1970. And you could have your adventure stories. I mean, you could name a barbarian anything and just have like the same kind of like formulaic example of a genre. You're gonna have a guy and he's got swords and he's got battles, and he might come up with hordes, or he might go up against sorcerers, or might come against like an alluring temptress, or a sea serpent, or an ogre, or
What
anything,
about the
right?
treasure? What about the treasure?
Right. And they're after treasure, and it's yeah, it's been around for quite a long time. So this is more of that, but very very kind of updated for nowadays, with especially some of those those kind of like future takes, right? They like there's instead of Kandahar, Afghanistan, there's Kromdahar, and there's like an adventure that takes place with like a military unit, nowadays in the book. So it's kind of throwing back to Crom, and even wordplay with Crom, and yeah, and you really get to see what you really get a lot of is Kurt Bruegel because there's like multiple. I don't know how many. I don't know if you know the number offhand, but um, artists that submitted pencils, and then Kurt took it from there. Put the word balloons and the inks and the tones and the finishes and the production and everything. So it's like Kurt Bruegel and this guy, 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 and you don't see that a lot. So it's obviously real labor of love, and a way for you to get a lot of stories out there without having to do all the pencils. I think this was all started and finished in 2025, or was
No,
this?
that was
No.
the tough part, and I've learned my lesson. I learned a lot of lessons. I actually started that right after 2024. The Crom collected, which is this one.
Comment.
Yeah, this was the one.
Collecting versus anthology.
Yep, and this was just collecting basically everything up to date that I had, which was Gardner Fox's 4 stories from the 50s and 1970, my 4 stories from 2018 that I then, put my tone and texture on top of it, and then took one of his one of my favorite, actually his favorite Sword and Planet from Planet Stories called Warlock of Sharador, and just revamped it into a transforming Crom story, which is really the shifting point where Crom goes from a barbarian cliche into he'll end up a dark god by doing very, very dark things. But yeah, one thing I do want to start speaking, you did me good right there, Jake. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask you, though, for some feedback in just a minute. But the one thing that I made my mind up 4 years ago, March, actually this time 4 years ago, was I no longer wanted to write pencil, ink, letter, publish comic books on my own anymore. And you called me in March of 2021 and said, hey, you want to do comic? Do you want to do a comic book? And I was like, thank you. And I want to finish because I've always kept Turbo Pit Fighter within arm's length, as well as some other materials that Jake Jacobs purveyed back in the 90s and stuff. So that really got me pushing forward. And as we started gaining momentum through 2021, I think about 2022 is where I started playing around with this idea of formulating Crom into Crom the Barbarian and the Cromunity, which is going on right now over at cromthebarbarian.com, where I just have to tell you right now, we're not even 1 month into 2026. And the stuff that has been submitted to me for anthology number 2 is bonkers. I have 4 stories right now in and around 6 to 10 pages each, already done. Now, this was stuff that people were submitting to me back towards the end of me finishing up in the summer Crom anthology number 1. And I said, just keep pushing forward, because next year I'll be taking submissions and let's just keep doing what you're doing. So super, super excited. As a matter of fact, yesterday, Jamie Barrows is the project lead for the Brutal Blade of Crom anthology, which came out the same August that I released Crom 2024 Collected. And of course, I reached out to Jamie and said, hey, let's support each other, which he is so into. Well, he came up with this sweet little Cyber Zerker. I just ordered a bunch of copies because I want to sell them on cromthebarbarian.com, because that's a part of the community, is that I really want people, as they kind of come in and out, save their pennies over months, and then grab a nice big hunk of comics, sword and sorcery based comics. But I sat down, obviously, and read this pretty quickly, was floored, reached out to him. So I'll be printing in black and white, 8.5 by 11 in Crom anthology number 1, the first 7 pages of Jamie Barrows' Cyber Zerker. So that's even if you want to put Crom anthology or Crom the Barbarian, the community, in 2 halves. One half is like people just making their stuff, and then me giving them the place to see it in print. The other half is the collaboration part. Just got my first script from Ron Parsons, which is Lala the Privateer, which is going to be a free script that people can download. And then a artist, emerging artist, if you will, Matt Boyd, nerd artist Matt on Instagram, is finishing up his first script, free script, comic book illustration, and then is already committed to a second one. So, and then I'm going to be inking a couple stories as well as my own stuff, putting down there. So I want to just play with other people. Like I really want to be just like the finisher in a sense. I'd like to
Yeah.
be there at the beginning too, to kind of like maybe put some input story wise. But for the most part, I just want people to like launch themselves, and then I want to like play around, with the materials as well. But it's really coming together nicely. So
That's
um,
great. Yeah, it's
yeah,
once you have a collection like that in hand, it's easy to see why other people would say, hey, I can jump on board now.
yeah,
You have a system. And folks, yeah, take advantage. I mean, you have to like sword and sorcery. That's kind of like a given. But here you have somebody doing all the legwork, and to put something out and to get it printed and get it published and then get copies in people's hands, and
yep.
everybody is taking part in this kind of like collaborative, right? It's a great example. It's actually what I was talking about for the sci-fi stuff, but Kurt was actually able to get it done. Within the last 2 years, these two collections. So good for Kurt, and I think maybe one thing you can do is, if you're getting an overwhelming response, is maybe start to be a little more selective and snobby and elitist.
Well, that is already going on. It's listed in the submission page, on the submission page, and I do say it when I do my own Crom updates on the Crom's YouTube channel, Crom the Barbarian YouTube. I am curating this book, so the thing about it, and it's super cool because one of the reasons I asked Jamie if I could print these 7 pages is that this character butts into another reprinting of a comic I'm going to be doing, which also leads into some technology stuff that's in this story and some other coming prose stories and stuff moving forward. So the curating part of it is, there is a well-designed, in my mind, flow of this book. So if you were to read it front to back, including the prose, you are going to have a very strong, I believe, narrative that should inspire you to come up with your own version of Crom-centric story comic book. So it's kind of like a looping system. And so I had 2 stories that were rejected for this one. And unfortunately, one of them probably won't get in this time because the technological element that the person has, there needs to be a stronger foundation. Yeah, it stands too much on its own. So as this kind of moves around, is that, I want all ships to rise in the water together. I want everybody, myself included too. Like the one thing I have right now is an immense amount of excitableness about like raising my skills, maybe not rising is a good, sharpening and focusing my skills. That is definitely a better way of putting it. So, yeah, I'm just, I'm really, and the next issues are going to be less pinup. Like I'm only going to have about 10 slots. But if I keep collecting pinups, then, of course they'll roll over, as space fillers to be able to keep the page count in.
Pinups are great. I noticed they're mostly you though, right?
No. Just to I really want to show this off, and I really want him to come back to comics. He's left us again. Is Jim Gullett. He's literally my favorite Crom comic book artist, but for the appearance of the way Crom, his Crom focuses through the story. Like I have the same problem of trying to keep consistent faces, but then at the same time apply emotions to them. We're just talking about a silly barbarian going around clubbing things and winning the day at the end of the day. But like the way he can keep the consistency of Crom as a character through his comics, I just absolutely love. He did us this two pager, and then there's mine. I think I have, and then and then in the back, it's what is it, 36, I think, or 30 something around there, kind of pinups where it kind of gives you more information about the creatives. And so, I'm not going to be doing that though. Like pretty much every Brutal Blade of Crom Barbarian artist for the first 3 issues, Jamie Barrows, submitted either their pinup or their splash page. Alex Turbin. So this thing's rolling, it's rocking. The sales goal is right now to release it and get 100 copies sold. That's my goal right now. My first selling of the Crom 2024 collected was 73. This was a meaty little purchase during Thanksgiving, which was just poor timing, which is still fine with me because there was a whole bunch of other successes I talk about over at Crom the Barbarian YouTube channel. But made 39 sales at a $35 price point. So that was super awesome. But we're going to be under 200 pages, black and white, 8.5 by 11. I'll be doing the cover again. It might be the last cover I do for a while because I do have a line of other people I wanted to be doing covers. But it's good. But thank you for the feedback in being selective, because it is a part of that process that I'm even putting myself through, which is curating a good feeling. And also to hear you say that you weren't able to sit down in one go really brings joy to my heart.
Yeah, so
that's by design. That is by design.
I have a to read pile, and it's been on the top of the pile for a while now. But I'm getting through it. Good. Another thing that in case anybody missed it, if you're a comic creator, and I know probably most of the people that watch us are comic creators, or a lot of them, reach out to Kurt. He is, besides collecting the talents of creators for the Crom the Barbarian collected anthology works. Notice he said that he's also distributing a couple of other works for other people, and I call it Kurt's Curations. You could do something with a K and the K there if you want, but he's got a website, and this is how it starts out. It starts out real small. And you can order multiple things at once and save the shipping and save the, oh wow, that's a great cover. And you could save the, if you're already buying something, you're already getting a package sent to your house. So you might as well see what else they've got, because you're not paying for the shipping. And it's like that makes it a little more accessible, a little cheaper to get, a little cheaper to own. So if you're ordering something, go to his website, kurtbrugel.com. And if you're
it's on Crom the Barbarian, cromthebarbarian.com. All this stuff is cromthebarbarian.com.
Cromthebarbarian.com. And then if you're a creator, regardless of what you create, run it by, and maybe you'll carry a couple of copies. Start out on consignment, commission, whatever, and then see if you can help each other distribute. The Power Pulp guys are doing that model, on a much bigger level, but it's the same idea.
I will also be bringing these titles. Whatever I have in stock will be going to me to shows this year. So you will be out there. You will be out there in the wild.
Yeah.
So
right. It's just like and it's just like selling vinyl, right? You can sell used vinyl, but you could also sell new vinyl. And if you like a band, why not have new vinyl? If you have a table selling vinyl already, By the way, I'm talking about records, right? If people don't know what I'm talking about, like vinyl. What is that? Vinyl siding. It's like it's the DIY thing. Self-distributing each other's work and you know, um, cross-pollinating, and then what I love the best is collaborating. Find
Yes.
somebody that's on the same wavelength and making something together with them.
Yep.
So there you go. And you know, project. I think that Kurt. I think you had a productive year, 2025.
Thank you.
Right? Everyone's doing their taxes now, so we're all looking back. I just got my W-2 for my teaching job, so you can see how much you make, and then you look at your bank account and say, "Where did it all go?" It all gets eaten up. Like this is how much I made gross. So this is how much you made after taxes, and then where's all the money at the end of the day? Well, it's all going to the grocery store, the electric bill. It's all going to the car insurance company and the mortgage. A lot of people have mortgages still, and you got just so many expenses. And I think it's a shame because the if we had the lifestyle, if we had the cost of living, that we had in the 60s when, you know, or even the 70s when or the late 60s when the underground, guys were getting started, you would have a lot more flourishing of artistic people able to do their stuff. And, you brought up this great example of this Ralph Nixon guy because here's a guy making some kick-ass comics, but he also has this full-time job that he's very invested in. And you know it's funny, you don't see too many people that are like on Instagram or Twitter and they're sharing all their artwork and they're sharing all their creativity. You don't see too many people also posting like scenes from their day job, right? And like talking about, wow, I can't wait to get home and do some comics. And but that's a reality. And there how many more people would be making comics and writing and collaborating if we didn't have this kind of like dog eat dog treadmill that we're all on just to pay the bills and god forbid saving up any money. Who can save up any money nowadays? So we just do the best we can given what we got. But Japan, Europe, other places where they really value comics more and they really consider the support of the comic makers a lot more seriously. It's a good society to live in. I always point out that this is true. In 1969, the average worker was, a male that's head of household. But he worked 39 hours a week and was able to afford a house, mortgage, a car, multiple cars, college for the kids, and vacation, like 2 weeks vacation. And the average work week was 39 hours. And now you hear all of this stuff about, oh man, the American dream, you can make it in America. Yeah, if you work 50 hours a week or 60 hours a week or 70 hours a week, maybe you can get ahead and scratch ahead. And if you have your own business and how many of us have 2 jobs or 3 jobs, or sometimes it's a hobby, sometimes it's a job, but pastimes, pursuits, and that you're hoping one day will make some money. The stuff I really want to be doing, like every actor, every actress has their waitressing origin story. So yeah, we talk about this a lot, and in the future I think it's going to be worse. So that's just a little note of pessimism to throw in the broadcast today, because it definitely looks like it's getting worse. My electric bill and my water bill have been climbing like crazy, and I'm seeing the headlines. It's happening all over the country, thanks to AI. But enough about me. Let's talk about Esoterra. We have this page I'm working on here. If anybody's been watching, I've been just finalizing the letters. I finally have all the word balloons done. It's not that many. I just have to put a tail on this one. This we're not going to use, so I can delete that. And this is a page of Esoterra using her mystical hand reaching out. And it's not exactly as it was asked for in the script, but it's wonderful art, which I love the way it came back. And we just added a couple of sound effects, some gray tones, kind of dirtied it up a little bit. I did these flames around Hellclaw's hands, and obviously we added the dialogue balloons. So yeah, this one's done. This one's pretty much done. I think I might just move this over a little bit. And no, I'm not going to move it over because I have this star here. So I'm just going to put a tail on it and call this page done. I can actually jump on the last page of the cat. That's going to be page 6. Can jump on that. So
well, my update is I'm on page 10, and then I got 11, and I feel very confident that next 3-hour session next week, which will be the 1st of February, I will be completing the 11 Alex Turbin, the Duke, the secret life of Dr. Duke.
How funny was that last week? How funny was it last week when we had Alex on and we're talking about getting through this all and everything, and we're talking about oh yeah, like let's talk a little bit about the Duke and the character. Like, there's going to be a continuation, and he's going to die at the end of his assault on the underground bunker and everything. And then it's so Alex to say, well, I was thinking about how about we add some more pages to the 11 pager. Like,
I love it.
What would you think?
I love it.
I love it. Oh man, we're putting this to bed. But but
yeah, you did squash, because I tried to back him up on it. I said, yeah, let's do 14 pages, and then we'll just print the first 7 pages, which means I could get out of my my work efforts.
Yeah, but then we would have to ink it and then word balloon it and everything. So that's why I say no. But but I'm like, let's take those ideas you have. Like, he was talking about expanding the battle scene between the Duke and the old 150-year-old DeHuberton guy, and I was like, well, that's not a problem, man. We could just make another DeHuberton guy that's even older than him, right? Like, but Alice is like, well, he just kind of turns the corner and blows the guy away. There's not really a battle. And I'm like, well, there's all this talking and all this braggadocio stuff. And then but really, like, how much of a battle would it be between like a strong guy like the Duke and a 150-year-old guy? And then like Alex is like, well, he's had all these mechanisms,
That's right.
It's
comic books, baby.
Yeah, well, he's thinking about drawing out the conflict and making it more exciting. Yeah. So I'm like, well, let's have all that, but we'll have to have it in the next episode. I mean, Duke is not out of the bunker, so he'll have to continue his assault. I mean, we're leaving. If I was going to introduce another page somewhere, I would have it at the end where he's running into the DeHuberton woman who is holding her own family hostage, because she knows that Duke married the the sister of the little girl, and he thinks that she thinks that she can use that to bend his will. So why don't we talk a little bit about who she is and who that is and all that. But we did end it on
Speaking of Alex, just want everybody to know there's 3 days left on his Kickstarter. I'm going to put the link in the chat right now, and he's hit that $500 stride, so everybody's going to get the bust sculpture
of the Cyclops, of
of,
Morgan.
of,
Yeah.
of Morgrim. So just so you know,
Yep. And so Alex, yeah, and he also has random access. He's a great ally of ours, a collaborator. We haven't hung out at a con with Alex yet.
that should be
That's
coming soon.
yeah, that's something we're looking forward to. But yeah, it was a great example. We had him on, and he suggested, or I suggested, why not do a collab in the Turbo world, in the Turboverse? So I gave him these links to all of these stories that I have sitting there and available, and we wrote him a 10-page script that turned into an 11-pager pretty quickly, and Bob's your uncle. But we have scripts available. If you're listening and if you're an artist or an inker or whatever, we have scripts available now. We have multiple scripts available now. Although the company man is being worked on.
Did you get an update from Sebastian yet? Have you gotten an update from him?
No, I got those 3, like, what was it, like 2.5 pages, 3 pages of artwork.
Yeah.
So those are coming out, and I assume he's just gonna finish that up whenever it is. I didn't necessarily tell him to rush it or anything because
it's not getting into this one.
Yeah, because Doom Magazine's number 2 is going to take a while, and he'll have time to get it right, finish it up, make it a good example, make it a portfolio work, But if there's anybody else out there, I still have. So he's working on the company man script, featuring Pitch Blend, who's one of the rectifiers, an enhanced super squadron female that gets enhanced by Elevena. But I have another script available. It's a 6-pager called Reading Paul's Farm, and has a little bit of a kung fu angle on it, but it's also sci-fi, and it's also dystopian sci-fi as opposed to post-apocalyptic sci-fi. But it's kind of like a showdown at the farm and a battle, and also like a little bit of mysticism in there, a little bit of like I guess magic. You were talking about Crom before, about like explaining the magic, right? How the magic happens. So now we're in the future where science can actually explain these things. Yeah, I'm done with this. I'm gonna start page 6 now. And
so we could very much by the end of next week be kind of all art and well, I'm going to head over back to the Tableau little segments, kind of bring them up to speed, because then we'll pretty much have everything in the can. We just need to dress it up, finish it up with lettering and the such. So I'm hoping by the end of February, we would be at least putting getting proofs from a printer, for getting the comic book out to the people.
Yeah, that's enough's enough. I know so many like guitar players that are just amazing guitarists, and I'm like, have you ever played a show? Like, have you ever like gotten on stage and played a show? And they're like, no. So I'm like, what's it all for? So there's so many people that just never finish their projects, and never bring it to an audience, and never get it printed and published. And I don't know how many unpublished works there are out there, but there's got to be a lot.
Well, there's something definitely to be said if you have like a place of joy in being creative, and you've got a pretty hard going life, whether it's just the not enjoying so much the job and pressures of like you were saying earlier about paying bills and stuff like that, and you can cut out a little bit of time here and there throughout your week and play the guitar or do some watercoloring or write some poetry or something like that. Fuck trying to make it into a job. Don't do it. Creativity is not a career. It's not. And it's definitely being exemplified right now. You need to have a good business sense on your shoulders, structure things and move things out in a very hard edge, hard nosed business construct. The idea that you're going to make something so beautiful that once it graces Instagram in a feed at 12:30 on a Tuesday is going to make you the next millionaire is completely done with. So keep it close to your heart. Keep your happy joy and space there. And there's nothing stopping you from, collecting your poems, putting your watercolors up in a coffee shop, or, publishing a song through CD Baby or something, nothing stopping, but don't, be very weary of the whole, I'm going to make my creativity a career, because it's all business nowadays.
Yeah, the thing that you might have an opportunity to do though is if you can get into a sustainable, business model, is you might have the freedom and flexibility to create more as opposed to waitressing or being a welder or whatever you do. So, um,
But
if
people
that,
might enjoy that. I was a waiter all through the 90s and loved every minute of it until I didn't anymore. And then I went and did something else. So
yeah,
I'm just tired. I'm tired of people wanting to be successful as a creative because they are creative. It's just a business. That's all it is. Definitely nowadays. So I
well,
don't endorse.
what a great segue into revisiting something that Kurt recommended to me last week, and I took him up on it, and I went and
Uh-oh.
watched it so we can discuss it. So there is, and I'll try to get a graphic of it so other people can watch it too. By the way, I pulled this up on my phone. You were talking about the Italian superhero low
Yeah,
budget
yeah,
movie.
yeah.
Yeah, this one's called
That's the
Three
dirt.
Dev Adam, and this was a Turkish movie from 1973, very low budget, and it has Captain America and Spider-Man, which I'm sure Marvel was thrilled. But actually, these are just people in costumes running around, and they don't necessarily connect in any
No,
way,
no story structure. No
right,
story
to
structure.
like Steve Rogers or Peter Parker or J. Jonah Jameson or anything. But no, on YouTube, you pointed out that there is a documentary that took a very critical look at Lichtenstein, Roy Lichtenstein, the second most
Oh yeah,
famous
yeah, yeah.
pop artist in history. And I watched the full thing, and I have a couple of criticisms to bring up, but let's discuss it. It's called Wham Blam, Roy Lichtenstein and the Art of
Pull it
Appropriation.
up, pull up, pull up, pull it up, pull up. There you go.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right here.
it's for free. Watch with ads on YouTube, and it is worth it. It's worth it.
It's a 1 hour, 18-minute movie, and it's put together kind of low budget. You could even see like the title graphics are using DIN condensed, so it looks like it was made on an Apple Mac. But I love that. I love that. That people can make a movie like
I
that.
do too.
And
I
they
do
had
too.
they had original interviews. They had a lot of old footage. They had some archival stuff, and they show you a lot of art. But basically, Roy Lichtenstein is the I'll just scrub a little bit so we can go ahead. Roy Lichtenstein is the second most famous pop artist in the genre. I think that's undisputable. And he got famous by appropriating panels from comic books. And we all know the famous dialogue balloon of the woman who's broke up with her boyfriend and everything. So he took these panels and he blew them up to be giant paintings in order to hang them in a gallery. And so, you have two things going on here. You have the original artwork itself, and then you have the idea of taking it out of its original context and making it an art piece in a gallery, like isolating something that we consider disposable. And I think that was part of the the concept, is that the art was disposable in the first place, right? And then Liechtenstein gave it this other home. So here's an example of a Liechtenstein, and it's pretty amazing because it goes through the genesis of how he developed this idea. Was because he was kind of like doing this semi-representational, abstracted expressionist art, and he wasn't doing good. He was in his 40s, and
Late 40s,
he was
45 when he started making these, or they got popular, I should say.
yeah, and he was doing this, and he was going nowhere. He was putting his kid, so I guess he had like other jobs and art agency jobs and stuff. And then he's putting his kid
No,
to
he's a
bed.
teacher. He was a teacher at a school.
Oh, is that what his day
He was an
job
art
was?
teacher. Yeah, I can't remember one of the big New York art schools.
Was that before he got famous?
No, yeah. That's what he did.
Oh, okay.
That's what he did for a living.
So there's this critical scene where he's putting his son to bed, and his son is looking at Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck bedtime stories, and says to Dad, how come you can't draw as good as this? And that gave him the idea to take the Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck stuff and take it off the page and make that into a painting. And you can see his very first painting is literally like Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. His first painting of that style, and that is $100 million painting now. And I think, actually, I think the record that they show in the movie of a Liechtenstein is like $80 million. But these things routinely sell in tens of millions of dollars. So they're asking in this documentary, what about the artist that created the actual art? And in some cases, he actually traced it on a projector, like he would do with his own work. Like a lot of artists do. Like Frazetta would do a sketch, and his daughter says he would use an artograph projector and project it onto a canvas, where he would trace it and get it, all the proportions and everything right, and maybe even some shading and everything before he would start painting it. So it's not cheating if you're doing it to your own sketch. But what if you're doing it to somebody else's artwork? And how come these paintings are selling for tens of millions of dollars? And here a guy like Russ Heath, who made the original drawing that it was appropriated, doesn't get a dime. And they show you like Russ Heath, like right before he dies, he's on his last legs, like literally asking for handouts from the Comic Art League fund, so he can just eat and pay his rent. And I think the message of the perspective of the documentarian is that this is really unfair distribution of this crazy monopoly money.
I think it's very. So back up before you go down your hill. I took the reason I endorsed this this documentary period is it equally shows both sides.
Oh yeah,
Equally.
definitely.
It even has an attorney, an entertainment's attorney, that speaks to how one legally makes a one-off and sells it in the fine art world. So
right,
that basically starts to answer your question. Now, ethics, morality, and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Well, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about morality rather than law, because I think it's a closed question that, that they're not going to be able to sue, like an old comic artist who had a panel used by Liechtenstein is not going to be able to sue, but there's a couple other things going on. Like number one, like the Liechtenstein estate could give credit. And
I agree.
That's voluntary. And you could also say like Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin got sued by Howling Wolf and by all the artists of Chess Records. It was what was his name? Dixon, Willie Dixon, and Howling Wolf. They basically took old blues songs, they made electrified versions, they changed the words and the lyrics around, but it's the same song. Or maybe they didn't even bother changing the lyrics, but they just put it out, and they made millions and millions of dollars. And then there was lawsuits, but they had an army of lawyers with Atlantic Records, and they were able to win these lawsuits easily. And
Peter Garrett.
They
Or Peter
decided to settle because the Robert Plant and Jimmy Page just idolized these old musicians, and they're like, can we just
it's reputation. It was reputation that made them pay.
Right. And the lawyers and the lawyers and the label owners are like, no, we can't give them anything because then that's an admission. And so, there's if you can get them to take the money, but then they sign something, that they're not going to come after you for any more, and blah, blah, blah. So they work these things out. And, the amount of money that these, old black blues musicians ended up getting was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars in these settlements when Led Zeppelin was getting millions and millions off the sales. So, there is happy endings for some of these cases. And it might not be like, Chuck Berry or Little Richard actually getting all the money they're worth, from the Beach Boys and from everybody else. But, if they could just get enough money to live out the rest of their lives in dignity, I think everybody would like to see that. You have these big forces, these big, business forces, that are, they just fight everything tooth and nail. Even if you're wrong, you can just spend somebody under the table and win that way, right? So there's a lot of different scenarios, and they consider all of these things in the documentary, whether they should deserve credit or and the most, like, to me, like, the most outrageous moment when everybody's yelling at the screen is when they just show this nobody, nowhere, nothing band. Right. And they used a Liechtenstein painting as their cover art for their album because a friend of theirs, female artist friend, was learning about Liechtenstein in art school, and they were actually studying the concept of appropriation in art. So she picked Liechtenstein, and she made a Liechtenstein for her art project, and then she gave it to this band to use for their album cover, and the band gets a cease and desist from the Liechtenstein estate. The balls and the nerve of them to do that, it's kind of outrageous. And so that was brought to light, and they had, I think they had like a pro bono attorney, and they won the case and everything, but and Liechtenstein went away.
No, stop. Nope.
What happened with the band?
I'm making shit up now.
What happened with the band?
The band basically worked something out in the way. If this is in light of social media,
they put a disclaimer.
So once again, reputation. So the estate, yes. So the estate, in terms of morality and how things should operate, is governed by law. So the one reason these things don't go to court is because the Liechtenstein estate could lose and then put a precedence ruling on the books, which could then backtrack, not only their estate, but all exactly. So,
and it would public domain. It would basically make it public fair game for
exactly. It would. So this is why things get settled out of court, and people, because But I think the Led Zeppelin thing was just that they didn't want to be sought out. They didn't want to be thought of as just shitty human beings. They're like, okay,
it wasn't up to the artists, it was at that point. At that point, it's up to the business guys, and and they might be diametrically opposed. I mean, what the Stones did? The Stones went to Chess Records to cut an album, and they used all those guys on their studio to put an album out. And then they also brought like Chuck Berry up on stage with them when they were alive to get them, you know, to
a lot
get
of
them
money.
some
A lot of money that he lost.
Well, yeah, I mean, Chuck Berry was touring until the day he died in his 80s. But you know, if he gets a TV appearance with Keith Richards playing live on some benefit, then he's probably like more than he makes in a year. So look, it's there's a lot of ways to collaborate and to settle things out, but people need to watch this documentary. It's a great documentary. And it brings up this this question, and there's definitely two sides to the story, and they let a lot of different people weigh in, and it's funny to see the people taking the side that always seems to benefit themselves. Like if you have an art dealer that's been selling Liechtensteins his whole life, or an art gallery curator and she's been displaying Liechtensteins, well, guess whose side they fall down on, right? You could imagine, that they want to defend Liechtenstein. But there's the court of public opinion, and then there's the actual legality. So at some point, it really is just a shame game, with these guys. And Liechtenstein, whether he was conversing with lawyers or not, he never really acknowledged the art, the comic book panels that he took, or the artist that drew them in any way. He even posed with them on the floor, as if it was just like disposable, stuff. And and Warhol comes up a little bit too, because the pop artists, perhaps to their credit, we're trying to say, we have all of this art around us, and some of it is disposable because, it's just trying to carry a story that a little kid is going to read and then throw in the trash. Or maybe it's just like, a package of a soup can that we're just, we're going to pour out the soup and then throw the can in the garbage. But there's a design.
Have you ever seen Andy Warhol talk about those soup cans?
No, not really.
His paintings. So I'll quote him. Okay. There's a famous documentary. It's all screen printed, but he still painted in everything. He still hand painted everything, but it starts as a screen print for just the can. But he had to do, cream of mushroom, cream of corn, tomato soup. He had to still, there was a thing. But anyhow, so there's a documentary called Painter's Painting, and it was put out right at this time of there was the transition of Robert Rauschenberg, Jasper Johns, Warhol, and Roy Lichtenstein. They were the darlings of the art scene at that point. So they say, Andy, what do these soup cans mean? And he goes, oh, I don't know. I just love Campbell's soup, tomato soup specifically, and I have it every day.
Right. And then
he never went beyond that. But people have actually, there's art historians that believe he was intelligent. He might not have been highly intelligent, but he understood enough about the manipulation you had to put out there, being in the high moving world of New York City. And so he was really touching on the idea that, I don't know, do you want to buy it? I mean, it's just a Campbell. He just put it into this just beautiful space. if you have to say, because he also did the Brillo boxes and then, so on there, but pure genius.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of skeptical that he eats tomato soup every single day.
Oh, he did. Oh, no. It's well documented. And his mother lived with him in New York City.
Well, that's why maybe that's why, it touched off his, that soup can being a topic for him to sing aloud. But he was pointing out all thousands of different images that we see on a daily basis, and just like, how ordinary it is to take that and then put that, because like, Picasso was doing stuff like taking, like a toilet bowl or a radiator, and putting it like on display in a gallery. And they were like having sport with, this like kind of snobbish, gallery
You're talking
curation,
about you're talking about
scene.
you're talking about Marcel Duchamp.
Yeah, Duchamp. Well, Picasso did it too.
Well, Picasso changed. Like he was famous for taking a bicycle seat and the handlebars and making it into a bull skull. That's like
Right.
one of the big things that he did. Duchamp took a wheel, the front wheel, and the what holds the front wheel, stuck it upside down, and then put it through a stool. And that was it. He called it art.
Right. Right. I mean, and since that's happened, you've had so many other people that, take something ordinary, stick it on the wall, and in the same vein, they say,
A
this
banana.
is my art. Right. The banana was the most recent one, and it sold for millions of dollars. Unbelievable amounts of money. The exact same idea. So, you have people doing this for a long, and that's what pop art is. It's like making fun of itself, and it's the artist making fun of these gallery people who walk around like they are, the arbiters of what is and isn't art, and they throw a piece of garbage on the wall, and they say, look, they're eating it up, right? So, that's all part of it. What you also have though is, it's stopping people in their tracks, right? To think about, all of these things.
That's exactly what art is supposed to do.
Right.
Art is supposed to stop you in your tracks,
but also
make you question your reality,
and also break the conformity, right? To kind of break out of that.
Good art does, and that's why it sticks around.
Right. And then if you're
good art because it does that.
Right, like there was a scene where they were like, "Hey, Warhol, was going through all of these different like iconic images that we all see, and just blowing them up and making them print, and then duplicating them in a factory, literally in a factory to to sell as many as possible."
That his studio was called the Factory.
It was called Andy Warhol's factory, right? And so then, at some point, he came across, somebody said, well, let's do it with comic book panels. And then, someone came up to him and said, like, no, so there's a guy doing that already. Right. And it was Liechtenstein. Right. So it's like, oh, shucks, at that point, he had cornered the market, because if you have, a couple dozen of them already done, that's your theme, that's your style. And, Warhol would have been just unoriginal, right? And
ripping off,
right. And and
so, Jake, I just want to interrupt. We're at the 1 o'clock marker, which means we're going to start. I'm getting hungry, as I usually do. But we also have 2 individuals in our chat that are looking at more direction on how to get a hold of scripts. So would you like to
Sure. Well, one thing is like we'd like to see the artwork samples. This says that I'm up for a comic collab with you guys. I think you've seen my Belly of the Bonfire art. I have seen it. I don't remember which is which right at the moment, but I'll check that out. You can find
it's on Squarespace.
Right.
I mean, I'm sorry, Substack.
Yeah. So you can find we have one 6-pager sitting there called Reen Paw's Farm, and that is at hellclaw.com/ReenPaw, which is spelled REENPAU. I could even put that in the chat. And
do that. I was just gonna say that you gotta write these things out for people.
I'll put it in the chat. But I want to say, like, what worked better with Alex was he read the whole hellclaw.com/comics kind of index, and he picked a character and a storyline that he liked better. So I'm going to put that in the chat, hellclaw.com/comics, because that has a lot of other story ideas. And if you go down to the part that says end of the world timeline, it has all these subcategories. And I could even bring it up to show all the fine folks here what that looks like. If I can get off these spam sites here. All right, so this is somehow I'm on private browsing all of a sudden, and I want to get on back to regular. Oh, I see it. I see the thing at the bottom. Alt task, and then click private off. Here's so I have all these tabs open, and a couple of them are this kind of like red background. And here, let me close this out. So here's what it's a very simple website, Doom Magazines. If you go to Doom Magazines, call Doom Magazines /comics, you can see all of the different storylines that are available. And maybe better than just taking a 6-page script that's sitting there already done, you might rather say, oh, I want to do this kind of a story, or I want to do that kind of story. So let's go over it real quick. We have Turbo Pit Fighter, which is our kind of our flagship character. Turbo Pit Fighter has been in the works for a couple of years. Number one's coming out soon, maybe in the next year or two. Then we have the Casualties, which is a 6-pager that's going to be coming out in Doom Magazine's number 1, drawn by Ken Landgraf and inked by Ken Landgraf. And I started to script Esoterra number 1. The Casualties number 1, which is going to be a 32-page comic, and I already have the first 2 pages scripted fully. Then we have Elevena 2222. Which is kind of like Esoterra's daughter, so it's like the next generation. Then we have Turmoil on the Planet of the Pleasure Bots, which is all about pleasure bots and the advances of pleasure bots and a gender war that breaks out between males and females. And then we have here we have the whole story index, which has Shankra Vaisha versus the pleasure bots, the Secret Chronicles of the Duke, the Casualties featuring Esoterra, Hellclaw, and Cremita. We have the Q Druids. We have Elevena 2222, and then we have the Sentients, and then we have Turbo Pit Fighter. So all of those things and more. And then when you get down to here, this is the important part. This is where there's a link to all of the stories and the notes and everything that we've been posting on Substack, plus much more, all broken out into their own category. And so here's Reen Paw's Farm, which has a 6-page script available. 6-page script for the Company Man. We have the Secret Chronicles of the Duke, which is an 11-page script, has already been finalized and finished. And all of this other stuff. Now, some of this could be comics. Some of it could be illustrated text. So if there's somebody that wants to collab and all you want to do is draw a couple of pictures and it's like take a scene or take a character and kind of like riff on that, that's great. But if you like doing regular old-fashioned sequential page comics, look at all this. We have the Hawkwind now that's been added, and Hellclaw Solo is going to be added, and I also have coming soon Little Winter, who's going to be another character, and I just added Kill Crazy Priest in Space for people that like planets and robots and spaceships and stuff like that. So and it's all part of the same world. So my recommendation is, if you're interested, is look through all of this stuff, and then when you find something that catches your fancy, then we can custom make a script together, like we did with Alex Turbin live on the air on an episode.
So Jake, let me intervene for a second. Do me a favor, just take a moment, put the link to the Hellclaw right now, and if you would like, also put your email in there, because this you're starting to talk out. You're just okay. Just do it for us right now, because Saboteur and Raz are all jazzed up. So
Yeah,
let's just make
follow.
sure that they get they're connected and everything like that.
Okay. I put the link and I put my email and they're checking it
All right.
out. And yeah, like I write like this was
So you
all
put-
Kurt. This was all Kurt's idea. Like I write like a madman. And Kurt was like, you know, let's focus this and we'll put this all somewhere and then I'll take little like bite-sized pieces of it, put it up on Substack. And so some of this stuff is on Substack, but I've been updating this stuff and editing it and opening it up. Like you might see typos and stuff. So I fix all that and I try to get it presentable. And we're actually going to take a couple of pages of the text and we're going to publish illustrated text in Do Magazine #1. We're going to have like at least 2 pages of illustrated text in Do Magazine.
So you put you posted in the YouTube chat.
Yeah.
I don't see anything.
It's on my end. You got to hit refresh.
Well, no, everybody else's stuff's coming through. I can't do refresh because then I'll lose the connection.
Well, don't worry about it. I'm looking at it. It's in the chat. I don't know why you're not seeing it.
All right. Just want to make sure.
Here, I'll show you.
Me neither. It's weird.
Look, confirmation.
Yeah.
See?
Confirmation?
Did you block
Okay,
me?
cool. Great. All right. Well, I don't know. I don't. So that's what I'm worried about. I mean, but they're seeing it. If they're just, hey guys, stop at Saboteur and Raz. Just make sure you say yes in the comments before we get out of here that you see the links and Jake's email, because we want to make sure that you get that. But yeah. What a great day, Jake. Another great, awesome day. I am literally 1 page away. And I'll probably go back next week during the 3 hours. I'll be working on this page first, and then I'll be doing little touches on all the pages to kind of bring them all together. But I'm feeling very confident that the next 3-hour session, Making Turbo Pit Fighter, Sunday 10 to 1, will have the Duke completely inked. Which, for my outro, CromTheBarbarian.com, Crom Anthology #1 is up for sale. Crom Anthology #2 is in the works right now. You have till the end of February to submit roughs to be placed in the mock-up to have a position in a Crom Anthology, because you definitely have to make the work happen. Definitely get over there. If you're not ready right now, go over to CromTheBarbarian.com, get on the newsletter. Next week, I will be doing a big post on how everything's been going for the 1 month mark, halfway point in the getting the rough drafts out there. 2 new books, or 1 new book now for sale on CromTheBarbarian.com and Amazon, which is what I'm pumping up right now. So this is a nice 56-page 1943 by the Arabian Nights, illustrated by a female artist by the name of Lillian Chesney. If you're sword and sorcery crazy like myself, you need to have everything that really inspired those who did and came before us to make the sword and sorcery magic happen. You can get it at CromTheBarbarian.com, or if you have an Amazon Prime account, either way, you can get this through Amazon with the Amazon Prime account for free. If you want to get your little toe in the water about my Crom and Mr. Fox's Crom, or I should say Mr. Fox's Crom and I put this together back in 2028, repackaged it to be on not only CromTheBarbarian.com for sale as a PDF as well as print, but you can get right now in print on Amazon. If you have an Amazon Prime account, free shipping. I'm actually be working in the next week or 2 on converting this file to be able. You'll be able to read on Amazon as well. But Jake, that's all I have for these good people. Let them get back to reading comics, making them if they choose.
Right on. And if folks you're watching this and you can't get enough, I'm going to be going on solo on live on Substack. Probably after like a 10-minute break on the DOOMMAGS. Yeah. So it's substack.com/DOOMMAGS, or just put DOOMMAGS Substack in Google. And I'm going to be live streaming because I'm going to be continuing doing the lettering and try to finish page 6 of this. Wouldn't that be a gas by next if I came next week and we were done with the casualty? Like, what would I even work on? I would have to go back to lettering the Duke. But I am going to make progress, and I usually haul off at some point and do some live drawing. But the most thing I'm doing is just talking, and sometimes I talk to ChatGPT and argue, and sometimes I have a guest up there. I've had Matt up there before, and if any of the current viewers want to jump up, all I need is your Substack handle, and I can invite somebody right on up. So come on up and talk, and hang out for a while. So I'm going to be probably by 1:30 live on Substack. I'm just going to put some reminders on my DOOMMAGS Twitter and my DOOMMAGS Instagram. There's the Turbo Pit Fighter, the second teaser, available now. Also have it as a downloadable PDF. And if you're watching this, you could also check out our previous interviews with indie comic creators. All became our friends. We love doing all that, learning about what everybody's up to, and hearing all their origin stories. You can catch that on the tab called Indie Creators Exchange on our YouTube landing page. We also have flip throughs where we go page by page and we comment on the coolest comics ever made. And that's on our tab called Comics That Influence. It's all on our YouTube channel, Turbo Pit Fighter. And you could also find us on DOOMMAGS, Twitter, Substack, and Instagram. So, folks, be back here next Sunday at 10. And if you're bored and you're drawing, go on to Substack in about 15 minutes, 1:30 p.m. And I'll see you there. I'm going to try to make that a weekly thing. But that's it, Kurt, man. Go get your sandwich, and I'll see you Sunday.
All right, I'll see you next Sunday, Jay. Take care.
Peace out.